Hello everyone, my name is John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and welcome back to me talking about books that are, for some reason, popular on the internet. Today we are talking about Pierce Brown's Red Rising. Now, this is yet again a book that you, the readers, have chosen for me to read. Red Rising, in fact, is a book I had heard of before years ago. This is uh, compared to some of the other books we've read on this channel, quite old. This book is from 2014, and I think I had heard of this book back when it came out. I must have been like around, well, it's 10 years, so I was around 17 at the time, so I think I had heard of this book when it came out and heard a great lot of buzz about it. So this is a quite well-known book, especially within the sci-fi dystopian genre bubble. And I've had this on my list, but wasn't sure if I should put it up for a vote because I thought, maybe it's too old or not as well known anymore. But then some of you in the comments have suggested to actually like present this book. And I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna put it on the next poll, and if people want me to read it, I'm gonna read it. And Red Rising won that previous poll with quite a head start, actually. So here we are now with Red Rising. Now, Red Rising, as I said, published in 2014, was actually Pierce Brown's debut novel. In fact, Red Rising won the Goodreads Award for debut author in that year and was also nominated for Best Young Adult Fantasy in Science Fiction in 2014. Now, the fact that this is often advertised as a YA young adult sci-fi dystopia book is something we'll have to come back to, because you could very well make the argument that this is not YA. However, I had also previously believed this to be a YA dystopian book. Now, with this book, I was actually sort of low-key excited to get into it because, like I said, I had heard of it before when I was younger. I'd heard mostly good things about it, and people I follow on Goodreads and on Storygraph who have read this book, all of them have given this book at least 4 out of 5 stars and sung it praises and said how cool this book is and that it's a great start to a great sci-fi dystopian series, because of course this is the first book within a series. I think it's the first book in a trilogy, but there are more books set within the world of Red Rising, I think. So I was actually kind of interested to get into this book. Now, just a general premise, what this book is about. Red Rising is set in a dystopian future where society is divided into castes, essentially, which are named after colors. At the top of the hierarchy, we have the golds. They are the ruling class who stand above everyone else, and all the other colors serve the golds. We have a couple of other colors who are not as important, so we have also like pink, I think blue, bronze, and all that. And at the very bottom of this hierarchy, we have the reds. Now, our main character, Darrow, a 16-year-old boy, is a red, which means he is essentially the working class. He lives and works within the mines and the tunnels of Mars, where he is a hell diver, essentially a miner who is working in the tunnels of Mars to terraform the planet so it will become habitable for future generations. But of course, as you can imagine, as the story goes on and comes towards its inciting incident, Darrow, amongst a personal tragedy, finds out that he and the rest of the Reds have actually been lied to, and there are already people living on Mars. They have been living on Mars for hundreds of years already, but no one has told the Reds what's actually been going on, and they have been essentially kept as slaves in the dark who don't know what's going on the top of the surface. So Darrow finds out about this and enters a kind of revolutionary army, and they decide to use him to infiltrate the Gold Society and use a bunch of genetic transformation so they can sneak him into the Institute, which is where the youngest and the best and brightest of the gold generation are being taught. And Darrow is sent there to infiltrate the society and ends up entering a to the death kind of tournament in order to be able to infiltrate the gold society. So that is the general premise of Red Rising, which in and of itself doesn't sound too bad. Now, obviously, it plays into some popular things that we know from the sci-fi dystopian genre, also especially around that time, 2014, we're sort of like still in the Hunger Games era, so of course, Death Tournament's quite popular. Death Tournament was honestly something I had not expected in this book, but that's something we'll come back to. And dystopian society, caste system, nothing new, but there are some elements in there that you can work with. And just going by the synopsis, I thought, okay, maybe sounds a little bit generic, but could develop in an interesting way. However, I'm gonna say this right up front. I hated this book. If you are watching this and absolutely love this book, good for you. I don't understand, but good for you. But this is most definitely going to be a mostly negative review of Red Rising, because I finished this book very, very, very angrily and also very relieved that I had finally finished it. So, as always, I will tell you a little bit about my general thoughts and opinions before we jump into the deep analysis of the book, where we go through the entire story chapter by chapter. I will highlight some story events, some character beats, will tell you my thoughts on them going by the notes I made while reading. And as a first timer for this book review, I also did some vlogging while I was reading the book, so I'm gonna edit in between some of these chapters. I'm gonna edit in some of my reactions that I had to moments within the book as they happened, so you can so you sort of have like this parallel thing of this is me talking to you now in retrospect, sort of, and then you also have me giving sort of my live reaction to some of the moments in the book, just so you can hear what I thought at the time while I was reading it. But before we jump into some of my general thoughts and opinions on this book, of course, as always, what is this book in depth really about? Well, here is a not at all sarcastic summary of what happens in Red Rising. Oh boy, I can't wait to get into this super popular YA sci-fi dystopia. My name is Darrow. I live as a member of the Reds, the lowest class in our society, and all I do is live in tunnels and slave away for the golds, the leaders of our society. I work as a hell diver, a hardcore miner who terraforms Mars so that one day it might become habitable. I'm the youngest person to ever be a hell diver, but I'm more skillful than anyone else, and I'm married to the prettiest girl in town. Oh wait, how old are you again? 16. I'm Io. I'm also 16 years old, and I'm Darrow's wife. Whoa, don't you think that's a bit young too? Darrow doesn't even understand that he's a slave, but he has to learn that we have to fight for our freedom, and that sometimes this freedom comes at a great cost, but it's better than to live in fear. Oh, Io, you're so pure and beautiful and innocent. I don't know what I would do without you. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever met, and I wouldn't know what I would do if you weren't alive. She's gonna get fridged, isn't she? Oh no! Io died! I will never forgive those golds for killing her. I will avenge her! Hey, we're the Sons of Mars, and we're running a secret rebellion. For some reason, we have decided that you are our chosen one, who will help to take down the Gold Society from within. What? People have been living on Mars this entire time? Now I want to kill those golds even more! Here, we'll give you genetic enhancements so we can turn you into a gold member of society, so you'll be able to enter the Institute. Ha! Getting into this institute was super easy, and I simply answered hundreds of questions correctly and only got a single one wrong. Hi, I'm Julian. We just met, but now they want us to fight one-on-one to see who would survive. I don't wish to harm you. Oh, thank you, that's awfully nice of you. Darrow, you are literally one of our best students this year. You'll be sent to House Mars. Oh, cool. I bet now Darrow gets to like infiltrate the society from within, take a bunch of classes to learn the ins and outs and the secrets of the Gold Society so he can take it down from within. Oh no, they've gathered all of our students and sent us to a medieval style arena with castles and swords where we'll be forced to fight to the death. Oh. Okay. I'm Cassius. I'm Julian's brother, but that won't be important until much later. I'm gonna be Darrow's right-hand man, as we both have the potential to become the leader of House Mars. Damn it! Titus has gained control of large parts of House Mars, and he wants to kill me. Haha, yes, I am Titus, and I'm the most violent and homicidal character in this entire book. I take slaves as spoils of war, and yes, I do assault and rape the women multiple times. What the fuck? I hope that gets dealt with in a thoughtful manner. I'm sorry that I have to kill you, Titus. You are my brother, and you deserve better than this. Come on, let's have more loosely connected fighting sequences that are intercut with moments of violence, torture, death, rape, and misogyny. I have received the information that it was actually you, Darrow, who killed my brother, so now I will beat you in a fight. Oh no, I'm wounded badly, and I have nowhere to go. What will I do? Hey, I'm Mustang. I'm a badass horse girl, and I've been in this story before, but I haven't really been relevant up until now. Oh, great, we finally have a cool, badass female character. I bet she's gonna be real cool and kick some real butt. And Darrow, help me! I've suddenly contracted a terrible illness that makes me all weak and fragile. Okay, well, I'm sure that's the only time this happened. Help me, Darrow! I've been kidnapped, and those people have stripped me half naked and are about to sexually assault and rape me. Oh, for fuck's sake. Don't worry, Mustang. I'll come and save you, and then we'll go and get an army so we can take down all those other people who scream like little girls, especially this one guy, Jackal, who we haven't met yet, but everyone's told me he's a real bad guy. I'm Fitchner. I'm from Olympus. I'm the leader of House Mars. And Darrow, I'm telling you that you have to lose this because Jackal is the son of the Arch-Governor, and the Olympus doesn't like what you're doing. So you have to stop whatever it is you're doing and lose. Oh, shut up. I'm Darrow. I'm literally the best at everything, so I'm not really worried about anything happening. Help me, Darrow! I've been kidnapped! Again? I've become the maiden in distress, haven't I? Slag. Hate those girls. Oh my god, shut the fuck up. Mustang, go ahead and deal with Jackal. I'll go gather up the army. You do know that she is Jackal's twin sister, right? Quick, she's betrayed us. Go get out the army. We have to take down Jackal immediately so that we... Yes, Jackal. I was just making sure that he surrenders. Does that mean I finally won? Congratulations, Darrow. I am the Arch-Governor and I applaud you for your great performance within the tournament. But you have to keep quiet about everything that happened inside the tournament. I will give you anything you want to buy your silence, but you have to keep your mouth shut and you have to join my household. Sounds good. Let's do it. I hate this book. So those are the events of Red Rising, more or less, in detail. So some general thoughts and opinions right up ahead before we start. I'm gonna try and keep these as concise as possible because there's a lot of stuff I have to say about this book, so I'm just gonna give you some quick bullet points here so you get an idea of what I will talk about in this book. I already mentioned it. Overall, didn't like this book. I thought it is not only badly written, it's also very problematic in many different ways, includes many sexist, misogynistic and homophobic elements that definitely did not age well and were already outdated by the time this book was written. This book is written in a style that I personally do not like because it is written in first-person POV present tense, which is not the problem. The problem is that our narrator, Darrow, the main character, talks in this very punctuate staccato style of writing, which means that most of these sentences are no longer than 10 words. And that's the entire book. The entire book is like this. It's like blah blah blah, blah 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 blah, blah 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 blah. So like very short sentences, which to me is a style I just do not enjoy at all. It makes it like relatively fast to read, but also it made it so that I would at times just use the flow of the story, and I would just like start skimming passages because the sentences were so boringly structured. And in general, at times, like the series of events in these books, how they're written, how they're presented to us, at times felt very disconnected. I would just sometimes not understand how we got from one point to another because it felt like there was no smooth transition between events or between actions that happened, leading to me at times being very confused as to how we got from one point to the other. Then we're stuck because this is first person narration. We are stuck in this main character's head. I do not like the main character. The main character is an absolute Gary Stew, an entitled, edgy wanker who this whole time, first off, does not act like a 16-year-old, but still goes on about how cool he is, how amazing he is, how he just happens to be so much better at everything compared to the people around him, even with stuff that he doesn't have any idea about, even with stuff that he's only done once or twice. He's immediately good, he's immediately the best. This runs through the entire book right up until the end. Either Darrow or someone else would be like, oh, Darrow is so cool and he's so good at what he's doing. That was very annoying. The general story is okay in the beginning, but takes a nosedive about 5 or 6 chapters in, when one of the important secondary characters is fridged in order to give Darrow some motivation for the story. And then we sort of explore this card system, which is alright. It sort of has this, it is color themed and also has like this ancient Greece, ancient Rome theme going on, which is alright and interesting, but for me wasn't explored in depth, and also was at times very confusing because it kept mixing. It was mostly ancient Greece, but it also kept mixing in ancient Rome stuff, and also just like politics stuff from now or from like the dystopian world. So those things were not consistent all the time. And once the story hits the part of where we entered the death tournament, it honestly, the story died for me right there, because I honestly did not expect that we would do a death tournament. I was expecting the story sort of teases you with, oh, here's Darrow infiltrating the society and trying to not be found out while he tries to overthrow the system from within. But then 3/4 of this book is just classic, almost battle royale, Hunger Games-esque death tournament, which is mostly set within this arena that has no hard sci-fi elements, no true dystopian elements. For the most part, it just feels like we're stuck in this almost fantasy medieval adjacent arena where people are fighting to the death on horses with swords and other stuff. This does not feel like a dystopian novel, sci-fi dystopian novel whatsoever. And then the story just proceeds to be like a series of events that are very loosely connected. Just like, people talk, they attack each other, they fight, there's some discussions, they fight again, then there's besieging castles there, and then there's some fighting again, and then there's some internal turmoil or something. Doesn't connect with me whatsoever. And while all this happens, you're stuck with Darrow, who's an annoying narrator, as I already mentioned. All the secondary characters that he encounters within this book are wet, cardboard cutouts. Essentially, there's almost no details on them whatsoever. Maybe 1 or 2 characters are interesting. Almost none of them are women. There are barely any female characters in this book. And the few female characters we get in this book at some point will become cliched misogynistic stereotypes. Because this book has some problematic shit going on, which has a lot to do with how women are being written in this book and how they're all essentially reduced to misogynistic sexist stereotypes. We have a character who gets fridged 5 chapters in. We have damsel in distress, Darrow just being the white knight for all the women. And also, and this is why I have to mention a content warning, this book also deals with assault, sexual assault, and rape. It deals with it very badly, not really addressing it at all. It's mostly just used as plot device and character devices, as we'll see. Does not seek to like address these themes in any detailed or neutral, like interesting way whatsoever, where you're like, okay, this is in there for a reason, like the story is trying to explore something here, it's being addressed within the story. No, nothing like that whatsoever. Then we have a bunch of just like casual sexist or misogynistic stuff along the lines of, oh, he behaves like a girl, or stop screaming like a girl, or you're running like a woman, and stuff like that, which clearly insinuates being femme. Anything that's femme, bad. Does not get addressed within the story as well. Doesn't also make sense within the world building that we received up until this point. You will get an explanation as to that later. And the same goes also for some homophobic remarks that are made throughout the story, where it's basically like, haha, gay. That's like as a joke that pops up a couple of times throughout the book as well. So lots of problematic shit that we have to get into here with this book. And essentially this book is just riddled with smaller and larger elements that just completely ruined the reading experience for me. That I did not enjoy reading this book whatsoever. I was honestly, if I didn't make a video about this, I would have DNF'd it. Honestly, there were like moments in this throughout my reading journey where I was like, I do not want to finish this. I hate this. I just absolutely hate this. So I talk fast because there's so much to say here, but I wanted to get some general opinions out first, which is why I was doing this so quickly. But now, we are going to jump into Red Rising chapter by chapter. This book isn't all that long. It's around 380 pages with 44 chapters. But oh boy, those were the worst 44 chapters I've had to read in a long, long time. So without further ado, let's jump into the story of Red Rising. This book starts off with a short prologue, which is framed as Darrow listening to a speech. So it's someone of the Gold cast giving a speech to a Red. And the writing style here already sounds needlessly epic and grand and kind of pedantic, which is a style that will be repeated throughout the book, especially with the Gold characters. They all have this sort of, I'm assuming on purpose, sort of pedantic kind of way to speak, which, to be fair, is a way to differentiate the Golds from the Reds, for example. But I'm going to read you an excerpt here in a second. As you will see, this kind of writing style it sounds a bit forced. Like I said, it's needlessly epic, but it also has a sort of sense of gravitas where you can tell, they really want you to think this is like really big thing, and unnarrated Darrow is reacting to this, and here you can sort of get already a first impression of what the writing style is going to be. Power must be claimed, wealth won, rule, dominion, empire purchased with blood. Your scarlet children deserve nothing. You do not know pain. You do not know what your forefathers sacrificed to place you on these heights. But soon you will. Soon we will teach you why gold rules mankind. And I promise, of those among you, only those fit for power will survive. But I am no Gold. I am a Red. He thinks men like me weak. He thinks me dumb, feeble, subhuman. I was not raised in palaces. I did not ride horses through meadows and eat meals of hummingbird tongues. I was forged in the bowels of this hard world, sharpened by hate, strengthened by love. He is wrong. None of them will survive. So that is sort of the first impression we get here of this book, which is obviously Darrow, our narrator, reacting to this speech. And then with this, we jump into part 1 of Red Rising, which is called Slave. In chapter 1, we are greeted by the narration of Darrow. Now, some short words on Darrow. Darrow is a 16-year-old helldiver. Helldiver are essentially miners who are working and living within the tunnels of Mars, where they are helping to terraform the planet so it will become habitable for people one day, as the Reds are believing at this point. And they are essentially the working class, the slave class, essentially, who are just living underground, working away rotting away as well, essentially. And the opening of this book was already gave me a headache, because I made a note here: oh, please don't tell me the entire writing style will be staccato sentences. I don't think I can bear it. Those were my first notes of chapter 1. And I just want to give you a short excerpt so you can understand what I mean with this, because this is the opening of the first chapter. The first thing you should know about me is I am my father's son. And when they came for him, I did as he asked. I did not cry. Not when the society televised the arrest. Not when the Golds tried him. Not when the Greys hanged him. Mother hid me for that. My brother Kieran was supposed to be the stoic one. He was the elder, I the younger. I was supposed to cry. Instead, Kieran bawled like a girl when little Io tuggled a hamanthus into father's left work boot and ran back to her own father's side. My sister Liana murmured a lament beside me. I just watched and thought it shame that he died dancing, but without his dancing shoes. On Mars, there's not much gravity, so you have to pull the feet to break the neck. They let the loved ones do it. So, literally the opening of the book, just so you get an idea. And you already get this idea of, that this is going to be sort of grim and dark. Darrow is not our usual normal 16-year-old protagonist, which already adds to this whole idea of this book might not be entirely YA, already going by the tone of voice that we get in these opening chapters. So what we learn here is that Darrow is 16 years old. His father has died. In fact, he died because he was arrested for, I think, revolutionary actions. He has, as we can hear, an abusive mom and a brother and a sister who still... they don't live with him, but, they are still in contact, and he's working as a hell diver. The language is also very, as you can tell, it's very edgy. It's also sort of needlessly, like, the aggressive, like, there's a lot of work, like, like piss and fuck and shit, and we rather stink, and, that's sort of the vibe you're getting from the language in this book. So what we learn about Darrow is that he not only is a hell diver, he's in fact the youngest hell diver, and he also works still faster than everyone else, which already sort of hint at what Darrow is going to be like as a protagonist. So he's 16 years old, making him the youngest hell diver, and he's also married. He's married to Io, who's his same age. And in fact, girls get married off at 14 in this world, which is arguably problematic. It sort of makes sense within the world building, because they say hell divers die young because of the work they do and because of where they live. So it sort of makes sense that they do marry young. But girls get married off at 14. And he's 16 years old and married to a 16 or maybe even younger girl. Does anyone ever mention that this might not be the best thing? No. With this, I can sort of still kind of understand, because, it makes sort of sense within the narration, within the world building, because they die young, so they get married young. Still sort of problematic. And Darrow sort of takes us through a workday. We encounter him in a tunnel, and I realized pretty early on, my note was, oh no, he's an entitled little shit. Which is what I mentioned earlier when I said, there's going to be a lot of Darrow being like, I'm the best and faster than everyone else, and everyone else doesn't really know what they're doing, but I know what I'm doing. And then sort of other people also around him sometimes being like, oh my god, why are you so good at this? The narration is sort of full of this, and this is already in the first chapter, as a little excerpt here, while Darrow is working, while he's doing his hell diving. This is how he's telling us this, what his work is like. I roll my eyes at the epigram. If the elders could do what I can, maybe listening would have its merits, but they are slow in hand and mind. Sometimes I feel like they want me to be just the same, especially my uncle. I'm on a tear, I say. If you think there's a gas pocket, I can't just hop down and hand scan it. Easy, no dilly-dally. They'll preach caution, as if caution has ever helped them. We haven't won a laurel in ages. So yeah, it's just giving you some ideas of what our main character is like. So we have some interactions between Darrow and his fellow workers. The workers are making jokes about marrying his wife if Darrow should die. I will remind you that Darrow's wife is 16 or younger. And they're just making like, oh, well, if you die, we're gonna take care of Io, your wife. And you're like, she's under 18 years old and these guys are like 40. Problematic? Yes. Does it get addressed? No. So Darrow continues to still judge people. He also judges his older brother. He's like, oh, my older brother, all he knows is caution, but I'm doing the hard work. I know best. So that's sort of his voice. And then we hear about the laurel, which you've just heard of in this excerpt. And a laurel, essentially, as I understood, means you get more resources for your family, for your clan, because the Reds sort of like live in clans, and Darrow is hoping that his clan Lambda will win the laurel this time. We enter chapter 2. Something is going wrong within the tunnel, within the work. Something is heating up, but don't worry, it all gets resolved. No one dies. We get a bit of locker room talk with the guys, just making comments about the wives and stuff, which feels uncomfortable, but is at least still somewhat understandable within the world building, locker room talk. Doesn't mean it's great, just saying. What we get here is, especially like during this sort of opening when something goes wrong, is already that we get a lot of tell don't show, which it's going to be a problem throughout the book, because Darrow is describing what's happening to him, this very tense scene, but he's essentially, all he's just telling us in the writing is, it hurts, it's bad, without really like letting us know what the pain is actually like. So there's a lot of like tell don't show within this book, because he just like explains, oh, this is what happens, this malfunctions, and it hurts, it burns, that's it. There's like no attempt made to like really go in to describe the feelings that Darrow goes through when shit goes wrong, and it's just sort of a first indicator as to what happens, like what the writing is like as moments like these happen. Darrow tells us more about his wife, Io, and he goes on a lot about her, without her, I would not live. She's the most beautiful girl in the village. I wouldn't know what I would do without her, and she's so pretty and pure and brilliant. And at this point, I was like, she's gonna die. She's gonna die, isn't she? She's gonna get fridged. She's definitely gonna get fridged, right? We all know stories. We all know what happens. So after this, we hear like a speech from one of the leaders of the country, from a sovereign, who says that she's really proud of the Reds, who've worked so hard to make Mars habitable, and we all know where this is going. So Darrow goes to meet up with Io at home, and we move on to chapter 3, where we have a big meetup of essentially everyone who's living down there in the tunnels, and we're told about the women, and all the women, of course, they're described as being always looking beautiful despite their work and despite having the children. They're all beautiful and petite and absolutely gorgeous and cute, and also because they don't do the super hard work that the men do. That's really important, and this is how this is described. But the women, they are beyond us, beyond me, lovely and spry despite the webbery, despite the children they bear. They wear layered skirts down past their knees and blouses of half a dozen reds. Never anything else, always red. They are the heart of the clans, and how much more beautiful they will look wrapped in the imported bows and ribbons and laces contained in the laurel boxes. This was already sort of the first hint at me being like, this feels a bit weird how this author is talking about and describing women, and this is something that will prop up all the time whenever a woman is described. This is something I will come back to, but just keep in mind, a straight cis guy wrote this, so you can imagine sort of the vibe from this. So we're being told, as Darrow sort of reflects on what happened, that his dad died during the rebellion, that he was hanged for this, and the chapter ends with Darrow's clan not receiving the laurel. In chapter 4, Io takes Darrow to a secret place. She takes him to essentially like an underground forest, I think, so they're not allowed to be there. So they spend some time there. I think they make out, like they shag or something. And then Io suddenly starts going on about, freedom and the revolution, the rebellion. And then she's like, oh, Darrow, you don't even know you're a slave. And Darrow is like, no, I'm not a slave. I'm a hell diver. This is something he'll do a lot. Darrow will often be like, I'm a hell diver. I'm using my hell diver hands, and with my hell diver power, or with my hell diver instinct, he will do that a lot. And this is sort of the start of this. And Io sort of like goes on about, oh, you have no idea, and the Reds, they need to fight, and we need to be free. And he's just like, careful about what you're saying. And in the way he says it, it almost sounds like he's about to do something bad. Like she goes on about this speech about freedom. He's like, careful. And you're like, what are you gonna do something to your wife? Why are you being so weird about this? Essentially, she like gives him this whole rebellion freedom spiel. So you definitely know that she's going to die. And I'm gonna look for this excerpt here for a minute, because while she gives him this whole speech about that he needs to be free, I think Pierce Brown ripped off Charlie Chaplin, potentially also Martin Luther King, because there are lines in this that feel very reminiscent, word by word, sort of what gets said, for example, in The Great Dictator. Like, I'm gonna look for this and I'm gonna read it to you. So this is the first bit of this speech where Io talks to Darrow about freedom. You repeat the same damn points, I say bitterly. You think a dream is worth dying for? I say it isn't. You say it's better to die on your feet? I say it's better to live on our knees. You're not even living, she snaps. We are machine men with machine minds and machine lives. And machine hearts, I ask. That's what I am. I know The Great Dictator. It's one of my favorite movies, okay? And you can't just... This is exactly what Charlie Chaplin says in the final famous speech of The Great Dictator. If I can, I will put a clip of it here if copyright allows it.
Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
But yes, those are the exact words. Like, if you type this in, we are machine men with machine minds, machine lives, you will get the speech from The Great Dictator. And I was like, did anyone catch this? That Pierce Brown, I think, essentially stole from this good speech? No? Okay, because I also think this wasn't the only time, because then the speech goes on and it sort of gives Martin Luther King vibes. What do you live for? I ask her suddenly. Is it for me? Is it for family and love? Or is it for some dream? It's not just some dream, Darrow. I live for the dream that my children will be born free, that they will be what they like, that they will own the land their fathers gave them. I live for you, I say sadly. Like, is it just me, or is this giving vibes? And no, like, I've seen no one being like, oh, this is oddly reminiscent, as in word by word taken from some famous speech. I don't know, I've seen no one mentions, and it honestly felt kind of weird. So, I don't know. So in chapter 5, they leave the secret forest, and of course they get caught trespassing, and they get arrested, and we hear something about the arch-governor Nero Augustus, who is basically here to, oversee the arrest and the punishment of Darrow and his wife. But of course, before anything happens, to the death, they get 48 lashes for going against the rules, which was already the first moment where I felt very much reminded of Hunger Games. Io gets the lashes as well, but then as Io receives the lashes while she's arrested, she suddenly starts to sing the forbidden song of death and lament. And she knows, and everyone else knows, that she will be killed for this. So she pulls a Pirates of the Caribbean 3, sings a dramatic song knowing that she will get hanged for this. And that's indeed what happens. In chapter 6, Io is hanged, and Darrow has to even break her neck so she dies properly. And 5 chapters in, the wife got fridged. Yes, she did. In case you didn't see this coming, but I'm sure pretty much everyone did, because this entire narration goes on about, oh, Io is so pretty, she's so beautiful, she's the light of my life, and I wouldn't know what I'd do without her. But of course she dies. Of course she freaking dies. And then Darrow is supposed to be executed as well, but just as he is about to be hanged, he is saved by some people that take him away. And that's the end of part 1. And we will now cut to the first of multiple live reactions of me while I was reading this book. So here was my reaction to finishing part 1. Okay, so I finished part 1 of Red Rising, and I'm not enjoying myself. I'm really not enjoying myself, because I already realized from chapter 1 that I'm not going to enjoy this writing style, because it has this it's this kind of almost staccato kind of writing style that I don't like, with very short sentences. Very rarely are there any sort of run-on sentences or sentences that last longer than 10 words or something. Is what it feels like. It's very much just I went over there. I saw this in this. Let me tell you about this. That's sort of what this writing style feels like. I'm told from the main character's point of view. An added to this writing style is the fact that I don't like our main character, who is called Darrow, I think, who's 16 years old. Doesn't feel like a 16-year-old. He's such a wanker. He's so full of himself. It's so annoying. He keeps thinking of, he keeps judging everyone around him. He's oh, he thinks he knows what he's doing, but I know better, because I'm the best. That kind of attitude. I hate it. I'm 6 chapters in, and I'm not really looking forward to where this is going. Also because, now the main character's wife died, which was very obvious, by the way, because for 5 chapters, this guy was going on about, oh, and there's Io, my wife, who's so beautiful, and she's pretty, and everyone loves her. Oh, look at her. She's so gorgeous, and she's the light of my life. Everyone who's encountered her thinks she's the best person on the planet, and she's always thinking the right things, and she's so passionate about everything she's doing. I don't know what I would do without her. And you're yeah, of course she's gonna die. Of course she's gonna die. The lady gets fridged. The lady gets fridged 5 chapters in. Fucking hell. Oh, let's see what happens. So yes, we already have a couple of problematic things on our hands. So the fridging of the wife, the fridging of Io, even though it was obvious as hell, doesn't excuse this is such an outdated, shitty stereotype, because Io is nothing else than character motivation for Darrow. She gives him the whole revolution, freedom, you don't even know you're a slave spiel. She gives him all of that, and then to motivate him, she knowingly sings the song so she gets killed, and this is then used as motivation for Darrow, so he will finally go against the Golds and enter the revolution. This is all this is. There's nothing else to Io's character. Throughout the book, Darrow will go on about, oh no, my beautiful wife Io died, and now I will revenge her, or she would hate that I'm doing this, but I'm doing this for her. There's nothing else to Io's character. This is all she is. She's the wife who got fridged, so our main male character gets some motivation. This is all this is. This is such a harmful and outdated stereotype that reduces women to just motivation for the male main characters. They are not even proper people. They're just there to die. They're just created to die. And I don't even think I have to explain this, how that this is like a really shitty stereotype. So we enter part 2, which I think is called Reborn, so with chapter 7. Daryl wakes up and he's greeted by a bunch of people who are on a mission. Daryl says that they're probably not Helldivers, also like because some women are there, and apparently women are very rarely on the drill team. Why? I don't know. Again, it's like one of those slightly sexist, misogynistic elements that just get thrown in there where you're like, what? Why? And Daryl, basically the first woman he meets on this new group of people who saved him, he's immediately like, oh my god, she's so pretty, she's even prettier than my wife. And you're like, what the fuck, my guy? She laughs and strips away her mask. Her face is day and night. The right side is a ragged, distant mess of skin running and folding together in smooth scar rivers. A steam bun. A familiar sight, but not on women. Rare for a woman to be on the drill team. Yet it is the unburned side of her face that startles. She is beautiful, more beautiful even than Io. Skin soft, pale as milk, bones prominent and delicate. Yet she looks so cold, so angry and cruel. Her bottom teeth are uneven, and her nails poorly maintained. She has knives in her boots. I can tell by the way she flinched down when I grabbed her hand. So this is how the women get described. And yes, there is also a man with her, but do you think he gets described in this much detail about how pretty he is, how good looking he is, how he compares to his wife, he has soft skin? No. This is how the man right after gets described. The weakling, Ralph, is unremarkably ugly, dark face like a hatchet, teeth all ajar and grim like the tubes in the flush. He stares out the tumbler's window hatch as we rattle and roll through abandoned tunnels till we reach lit paved tunnel roads meant for fast driving. That's it. That's like all the description we get on the guy with him, but yet the woman gets like one entire or two entire paragraphs. It's just like little things like this. If you know that a straight cis guy wrote this, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes you can just tell. So we move on. Darrow meets one of the leaders, I guess, of the revolution, a man in his 40s named Dancer. It's mentioned that there's only one girl there called Harmony, who then gets immediately strangled by Darrow for, I mean, she like sort of insults Io, sort of insults his wife, but he immediately snaps and strangles the woman. So the first act of violence we get in this book is, of course, violence against a woman via our main character strangling her. Fantastic. And we already get some hints of how that this sort of society or this book has a sort of mythology theme going on, because this revolution is sort of described as I think not like Ares. Like there's later there will be a House of Mars, but this rebellion group is sort of like, oh, you're son of Red, you're gonna be the leader of like the Ares house or something like. So that's what the revolution is called. And Darrow essentially says that he now has the motivation that he wants to kill Arch-Governor Augustus, who was there to oversee the execution of Io. So in chapter 9, we get the big reveal that there are already cities on Mars, that the Reds essentially worked for nothing their entire life, and we get a gigantic like info dumping dialogue basically that lets us know what has happened for the last 700 years, how the Golds and all the other members of the different castes came to Mars, established their society, and what's been going on since the Reds have sort of been have been kept in the dark. And those info dumpy moments occur a couple of times throughout the book, because especially in the beginning of this, when it's revealed, the Reds have been kept in the dark and there's a lot of other stuff going on. we just get so much info dumped at us. Like they stuff like 50 world building facts essentially into one paragraph of story, which just feels so overwhelming. Like this is what this sounds like. When Dancer told me what I am to do, I laughed. I do not know if I can do it. I am a speck. 1,000 cities span the face of Mars. Metal behemoths sail between the planets in fleets carrying weapons that can crack the mantle of a moon. On distant Luna, buildings rise 7 miles high. There, the sovereign consul, Octavia Olun, rules with her imperators and praetors. The Ash Lord, who made the world of rare cinders, is her minion. She controls the 12 Olympic Knights, legions of peerless scar, and obsidians as innumerable as the stars. And those obsidians are only the elite. The great soldiers prowl the cities, ensuring order, ensuring obedience to the hierarchy. The whites arbitrate their justice and push their philosophy. Pinks pleasure and serve in high-collar homes. Silvers count and manipulate currency logistics. Yellows study the medicines and sciences. Greens develop technology. Blues navigate the stars. Coppers run the bureaucracy. Every color has a purpose. Every color props up the gold. So that's a lot of information for one relatively short paragraph, and you're all just expected to like keep this in mind at all times. This is also mostly all the explanation we get for the other colors within the system. We maybe get a bit more on pink later on, but that's it. Like all the other casts aren't really important in this book. It's really just about the reds and the golds. That's all you need to know. There's no other in-depth exploration of how this color system works, what each and every single color does, what they think of the golds, what they think of the revolution, if they even want a revolution themselves. We're not really getting anything on that, because as we enter now this revolution, this rebellion group that Darrow joins, it's mostly run by reds, like 99% of it reds, and apparently no one else wants rebellion, wants revolution, which doesn't make sense, because especially other colors like pink, who are essentially the sex workers of the society, have reason to hate the golds and to go against them. Everyone works for the golds. They are all beneath them. They essentially all have a reason to hate the system and to go against the golds. But for some reason, this revolution group that we're now encountering is mostly or only run by reds. They're the only ones who are really important to this entire rebellion thing, which doesn't really make sense, because everyone else has a reason to work for this group, essentially. And the book just tells you every color props up the golds, but how the golds essentially reached this high ranking within society, why they are the best, why they're in power, how they keep their power, how they are running everything, is not really going to be explained. It's just always mentioned that they are the highest caste. Everyone works for them. They are violent and brutal, and they enslave the whole of society, essentially. But it's never really explained as to how they got there and how they managed to stay there. Like, how are they subjugating the other groups? How are they staying in power? How are they using their money? How are they using their influences? What are they doing that ensures that they stay in power? There's nothing along those lines. It's really just reds, underdog slaves, golds, rich entitled wankers. That's all you need to know, essentially. There's nothing more in-depth than what I just read to you. This is essentially all you need to know about this society. Gold's bad, everyone else okay, especially the reds. The reds are good. That's sort of like all you need to know. So Darrow meets some of the other people in the group. We get some more uncomfortable descriptions of course, the female characters, because for some reason, every time a female character comes up in this book, the way she's described is either her breasts have to be mentioned and or how pretty her face is. And this, once again, just part of how you can tell that a straight cis man wrote this, because they just be like that sometimes for no reason. There's really no reason to do this. I do not need to know what a woman's breasts look like. It's not relevant. It's really not relevant. And there is a moment as he is like brought into this group of the leaders of the rebellion group or something, and they essentially just sort of tell him what they plan on doing, that they want to infiltrate the society, but now they have chosen him. Why they have exactly chosen him to be the one special man who's supposed to take down the society from within? Don't know. Maybe because his dad was in the rebellion? But, I mean, Darrow, of course, is super special. He's already told us multiple times, and of course, also in this scene, when he goes to see the rebellion, in order to show off, he like sees a puzzle, like sort of a Rubik's Cube kind of thing on the desk, and he's like, well, I don't understand maths or anything like that intelligence nonsense, but I know movement, so of course I'm solving this Rubik's Cube within 5 seconds. And then everyone in the room is like, oh, what? And then he solves it again 3 times within 10 seconds because he's that good, even though he doesn't understand maths, but he knows movement. And everyone's like, oh, how did he do that? He's so good. And you're like, I got it. I got it. I got it the first 10 times you told me that. Honestly, I did. Okay. So they go in chapter 10, they go to what is essentially like a club to talk to someone who will help set up Darrow for their plan. So their plan is to turn Darrow into a Gold, physically and genetically, so he can infiltrate the society from within, because the Golds are all genetically changed and enhanced. So they will do the same thing for Darrow, so he appears like he is one, like he's a member of the Gold Society, and they give him like a fake identity and a fake background history and all that, so that he will essentially, so that he can apply to the institute where all the best and brightest of the Gold Society are being educated. So in chapter 11, they have him like apply for the institute, and people, like it's already hinted here that apparently people die or could potentially get killed off at this school, and I was already having Fourth Wing and other kinds of flashbacks, because why the hell is everyone always getting murdered at their schools? Why are all these schools trying to teach their best and brightest, but then they just start killing them off? Why is everyone always doing that? So in chapter 12, Darrow now goes through this absolutely agonizing transformation, genetically and physically, to turn him into the Gold, and we're sort of told about it, how absolutely agonizing it is, but there is no feeling invoked within the writing whatsoever. Once again, it's very clean, relatively dry, just Darrow telling us very casually, oh hey, they're removing my skin and I literally died 2 times while all this happened, and it hurt, but like there's no emotion invoked within this writing whatsoever. My life becomes agony. My sigils are attached to the metacarpus in each hand. Mickey removes the old red sigils and cultivates new skin and bone over the wounds. Then he sets to installing a stolen subdermal data chip into my frontal lobe. I am told the trauma killed me and they had to restart my heart. I've died twice since then. I've died twice then. They say I was in a coma for 2 weeks, but to me it was nothing but a dream. I was in the veil with Io. She kissed me on the forehead, and then I woke and felt the stitches and the pain. That's it. We just casually get told, I died like 2 or 3 times, but apparently it was super agonizing, literally the worst thing this man has ever went through, but dealt with it like that. So at the end of chapter 12, we can insert another reading vlog of me here reacting to what we've read up until this point, which is me mostly just complaining about how Darrow is being a massive Gary Stu, but see for yourself. So, I just about finished, I think, like, chapter 12 or something. And I don't want to be stuck in this main character's head anymore. Honestly, he's such a
he's already basically a Gary Stu. Like, I can't get on with how everyone keeps already going on about how special and how chosen and wonderful he is. Like, he gets complimented all the time. Like, oh, you're a special boy. Oh, you're special like me. Oh, I can tell you're different. He's called a stallion. It's like he's a stallion, not easy to, not easily held down, but beautiful. Then someone else says, "Oh, you know you look really beautiful, don't you?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, everyone, shut the fuck up! I get it, I get it. Daryl is like the bestest, the coolest guy in the whole universe. I get it." What else I don't like is how women are described in this book all the time. Like, do you know when you read a book and you just get immediately can kind of get the vibe that probably a straight cis guy wrote this, where like every time a woman is described or her body is described in any way, shape, or form, either her breasts have to be mentioned or described, and or the prettiness of her face has to be mentioned. And this has happened to every single female character so far, even the unnamed ones, even ones that are just casually mentioned to be hanging out in the background. And it's honestly really, really annoying and feels low-key kind of sexist. And I'm honestly not looking forward to this. I'm only like, I haven't even finished part 2 yet. I'm already so annoyed by so many things. And I'm low-key kind of scared of what's going to happen next.
In chapter 14, there's more like treatment to his body. And it's sort of like, I'm not sure, I think it's about like shaving or taking care of his body. And essentially a male slave attends to Darrow and gets like, has to get like all up close to him, to his body and physically, and also like his private bits and something. Just does his job essentially, and Darrow just punches him. Like out of nowhere, he starts feeling uncomfortable about that this male slave is doing that, and then he just decks him. No context for this apart from, I guess Darrow doesn't want to be gay. So he punches a guy who is just doing his job so he doesn't die later. Yeah, sure. So he gets like more training throughout the next chapters. He like gets all this etiquette training. He does like a whole of course he's good at immediately everything. He like gets told things only once and then he immediately nails the behavior, immediately nails the knowledge. Some of it is sort of explained that he gets like, it's explained with the genetic enhancement. Some of it is explained that, sort of like Matrix, like he gets chips inserted into his brain so he has special knowledge, but not all of it can be explained that way, and it still feels not only unearned, but also feels so annoying and repetitive to just hear all the time that Darrow nails it within one try, that he's surprisingly good at something, that he's faster than everyone, and just it runs through the entire book. Within chapter 15, 16, we're now preparing to like do this entry exam that's happening. So he's going to the institute. He runs into a girl who once again is described as being, of course, absolutely gorgeous. After the test, he like talks to some of the other girls who are there to talk about some of the questions on the test, and of course, because he's so good, he was so good at it, he even says something along the lines of, "Oh, I thought it wasn't that difficult," and everyone's like, what? Like, everyone immediately clocks that him showing off or being like this is weird, even though Darrow was told to not behave this way. I don't know. And once Darrow is done with this test, he says that out of hundreds, multiple hundreds of questions, Darrow got one wrong. He has the best result of the entire class. Out of hundreds of questions, only a single one he got wrong. And no, I don't care that he received an intelligence chip. I really don't. Like, it just keeps feeding into this. Darrow is the best. Darrow is the coolest. And of course, he nails the entry exam. He doesn't understand anything about Gold Society yet. He only received like an unearned intelligence booster, but he doesn't know anything about the society. He doesn't know about the goals. He hasn't lived as a gold, but he still somehow nails basically all the hundreds of questions of this entry exam. Like, in fact, he's so good, I think that at some point, while this happens, like a policeman or something along those lines shows up and interviews him and essentially believes that he cheated because he's so good. They believe he cheated, but of course he couldn't have, because of course he couldn't have. He's just that good. And then we learn more about the Institute, and the Institute is essentially kind of like Hogwarts. And I'm saying this is like Hogwarts because there are houses, and the houses are based on personality, because of course they are. The houses, I know these. There are 12 loosely based on underlying personality traits. Each is named for one of the gods of the Roman pantheon. The schoolhouses are networking tools and social clubs outside of school. Do well and they'll find you a powerful family to serve. The families are the true powers in the society. They have their own armies and fleets and contribute to the sovereign's forces. Loyalty begins with them. There's little love for the denizens of one's own planet. If anything, they are the competition. So yes, bit of Hogwarts is there as well, each named after a Roman pantheon. Again, we sort of have this Greek and ancient Rome theme going on, which sort of runs more or less through the entire society. And now it's time for Darrow to enter one of those houses. Of course, he's categorized as one of the 100 best students in the entire class. And I think he's even like chosen to be in the top 10 of his year. It's not quite clear. And he eventually ends up being chosen by a so-called, I think, by a knight, by Rage Knight, the third greatest man on Mars. So again, Darrow is a very special boy. Darrow is a very special boy, and eventually he will end up in the house of Ares, like Mars essentially. We meet some of his future classmates who are all not really important. So there are people like Julia, Cassius, Julian. Julia, not important. Julian will be important for like 2 chapters. Cassius will meet again later. In chapter 19, as he sleeps, he's awoken very rudely from his nightly sleep. Darrow's beaten up and taken away, and he immediately thinks, is this a test? And yes, it is. Darrow finds himself in the same room with Julian, who we've gotten to know like 1 or 2 chapters ago, and he was sort of nice and friendly, but now, of course, they want Darrow and Julian to fight to the death because only one of them is allowed to continue their education. Why? They're giving us an excuse of, we only want the best and the strongest. This is why we're doing this one-on-one fighting before we dive deeper into our education. But it honestly, once again, feels sort of redundant because this is based on a society that's trying to preserve their best and brightest of their society. They're trying to keep the golds in charge. They're trying to have the best people available. They're trying to keep up all the resources with all these good students who are all coming from very prestigious and rich families. But then they just, again, like in other books that I complained about, they just kill off so many potential useful people instead of using them in another more useful way. And of course, Darrow is now like, oh, I don't want to kill. I'm not that person. He's like, I don't want to hurt him. And I was like, you don't want to hurt him? I thought you hate all the golds. Because right up until this point, Darrow has always been like, I hate all the golds are shit. I will kill all of them and I will rip down society. And now he's like, oh, I don't want to kill him. And then, you know what he does? He flies into a homicidal rage and beats Julian to death. Yep. No qualms about this whatsoever. In fact, this is a thing that Darrow will keep doing. He will be like, oh, I don't want to hurt anyone, I don't want to kill anyone, but like at the slightest moment of like inconvenience, of anger or something, Darrow will immediately fly into like a homicidal, very violent rage and kill people. This will happen. He always goes on about, oh, I don't want to do this and we're not here to kill people, and then he just flies into homicidal rage. Does he ever develop out of this? Does he ever become self-aware that this is a problem he's having? Not really. So this is the end of part 2, and I will once again refer you to past me reacting to what we've heard up until now.
So I just finished part 2. I'm now on chapter 20, and I'm still not enjoying myself, mainly because everyone cannot shut the hell up about how bloody amazing and special the freaking main character is, including the main character. It's honestly grating on my nerves. Like, everyone is going on about how perfect he is, and now that he's entering like this school, he has to take this exam, this entry exam. Of course he nails it. In fact, he's so good that someone comes in to investigate if he didn't cheat, because he is that good. Out of literal hundreds of questions, he only got one wrong. One single one. And I don't care how much genetic modification he got, because I'm assuming some of the stuff is just based on, I don't know, culture or stuff like that, stuff he just can't know about yet. And he literally nails hundreds of questions that easily. What the fuck? He literally has like the best entry exam out of all of them. He gets voted into like the top 100 of the entire class, and he's chosen as one of the top 10 students of his year. And I'm like, oh my god, can everyone just shut up about how fucking amazing Darrow is? Like, honestly, every single thing about him is good. He is good at literally everything. Even stuff he's not even really trying. He's just naturally gifted and talented just because he is that cool. And if honestly the rest of the book is gonna be like this, I don't know if I want to read this. Like, honestly, this is so fucking annoying. This reminds me of Ready Player One. This is exactly like the same tone of voice in regards to the main character, who's so full of himself, who thinks he's the coolest, most smoothest motherfucker around. Everyone else is beneath him and he's just the best, even though he isn't even really trying. And everyone else, even people who don't really know him, think he's the coolest and the best looking one. Like, everyone just thinks he's cool. And now at the end of part 2, he fought someone to the death in order to be able to enter the school, essentially, because the institute that he now is getting into basically has Hogwarts houses. It has like 12 houses that are dependent more or less on personality traits. Didn't expect we were gonna do that, but okay. And now, since there's only one spot left, he has to fight someone to the death we met like 2 chapters ago, who we thought is gonna be maybe become a secondary character. No, he like beats him to death. Even he's like, oh, I feel so bad about, I don't want to hurt him. Even though this entire time Darrow's been going on about how much he hates the golds, how much he hates the upper class, the upper caste of this system. but now he's like, I don't want to hurt him. He's not that big of an idiot. I'm like, you hate these people. You universally said that you hate all of these people for who they are, for which class they are. But for some reason now you don't want to hurt this man, and then he does it anyway. Like, he goes into a blind rage and beats this boy to death. I'm not getting on with this main character at all. And I'm honestly worried about what's going to happen next now that we enter the Institute, that this is going to become like a Hogwarts Hunger Games storyline. Because if that's where this is going, I am not going to have fun. Well, I'm not having fun already, but I'm going to have even less fun, if that's possible.
So now we enter part 3. With chapter 20, Darrow is comforted by a man called Roque. I'm gonna. It was pronounced Roque in my head. It's spelled like this in like a weird French. I don't know, but yeah, he's comforted by this guy who's like a sort of more educated, like poet, artist, kind of person. And we're told that this was all due to natural selection. And again, my note is, why is this necessary? Why is it necessary to kill some of your best and brightest if he could use them elsewhere, if they're all such important members of society? This doesn't really get explained. At this point, I was starting to lose the plot a little bit, because everything now is sort of moving very fast. This is what I meant earlier when I said this all feels like a more or less loosely connected series of events without any like real transitional phases. We're just moving from one thing to the next, and sometimes you're just sort of losing attention for what is happening. And now they're being sent off to fight in this tournament to the death. So this is where we're sort of entering the Hunger Games portion of this book. And they're all sent into like this mountainous region. So like the group of Mars, which is Darrow's group, they're all sent to like this mountainous region with a castle. And there's also like a giant battlefield. So all of these groups, all of these 12 houses now have their own like castles. There's a battleground, giant mountainous region. And they're all sent there to essentially not fight to the death, but obviously they end up killing each other anyway. And, the last house standing basically will win. And this means if you win, you will have great chances later to get a good apprenticeship and to get some good jobs and positions within society. And Darrow is now sort of realizing that now death is like an actual thing that he has to commit to, or that the others had to commit to. But there's a certain kind of hypocrisy to this, because Darrow will be like, hates the Golds for being who they are, that they killed, even though he himself just killed the other day because of the one-on-one fight. Like, he's not really, at this point, I'm not really that much better than them. And I think I have an excerpt here for you, so you can see what I mean. Nothing is silent about the boys' curses. I feel no pity for these students. They all murdered someone the night before, just like me. There are no innocents in this game. The only thing that worries me is seeing how Cassius dispatched his victims. He is grace and finesse. I am rage and momentum. He could kill me in a second if he knew my secret. So yeah, Darrow is sort of like, oh, I have no pity for these people. They all killed someone. And I'm like, yeah, you killed someone too. You're on the same level as these guys. Don't think you're that much better than them right now. And Cassius, who just got mentioned here, he will become more important now as the story goes on. Cassius is the brother of Julian. So Julian being the one who Darrow killed in the one-on-one fight, Cassius is the brother of Julian. Now, the official, more or less official rule is killing is no longer okay. Like, it's still allowed, but it is said that it's now more about, ruthlessness and how you can assert your power and position. It's more about that, but I'm like, why is it not about this earlier? Why was the one-on-one fight necessary then? I don't know. And they come as a group, the Mars group, Darrow and his friends sort of come to the conclusion now in the beginning of this area, of this arena bit, that will be essential to their victory to take slaves, essentially. That there are 12 tribes sort of represent society, and now you're asserting your dominance over the other tribes, also by capturing them and taking slaves. So now we're stuck in this arena, and the group talks about, choosing a leader who could lead the group. Sort of like the potential leaders here are Cassius and Darrow. There are like a bunch of characters mentioned here we have no real connection to, and yet Darrow would be like, oh, I like him, I like her, he's stupid, I hate her. And I'm like, we don't know these people, you're just throwing out names. This book will throw a bunch of secondary character names at you, or tertiary character names. They're not important. You do not need to remember them whatsoever. By chapter 23, we're told that the House of Mars itself has dissolved within 4 tribes. So now the house in itself is divided, as you say. And it's said that some of them are led by a person called Titus. He will become a bit more important later. And someone called Antonia. Who they are, no idea. I have no context for these people. And the note I made here is the story is grinding to a massive halt, which honestly it really did by the time we entered this death tournament. It all just became a bit muddled for me at this point, which is also why I took fewer notes at this point. It all just became a bit too muddled for me. There's just like loosely connected events that keep happening, but they're not really. They don't really feel necessary, or not all of them feel like they're that essential to the plot as a whole. At this point, those insults and lines along the lines of, haha, you're walking or screaming like a woman, or haha, femme is bad and funny, they're now really starting to pick up. Like, some of, just as an example, one of the first instances here within the death tournament bit. I stiffen, not knowing what to do. Look at him squirm, look at him weave a lie. Titus's voice is all disgust. I can smell your deceit, smell the lies dripping from you like sweat. Like a woman in heat, Pollock says sardonically. He shrugs apologetically at me. Disgusting, Vixus sneers. He's a vile thing, a wretched, womanish thing. I don't know why I thought I'd be able to turn him on Titus. So, just keep those remarks in mind, because they pop up frequently. I'm just not going to mention all of them. Darrow intends to confront Titus, who is like one of the internal leaders of one of the houses of the tribes within the House of Mars, and his right hand Vixus. Like Titus is a really, really bad guy, as we'll acknowledge more in a moment. Just saying, he's real bad. Lots of violence, lots of assault, lots of raping, just so you know. And Darrow at some point then goes to confront Titus and Vixus to go talk to them. And if you thought Darrow couldn't be more cliche with, he's so special and talented. No, he hits you with, he's not like other boys line. I've broken uppity boys like you in the dueling clubs 1,000 times. You have? I asked incredulously. Broken them like twigs, and then taken their girls for sport. What embarrassments I've made them in front of their fathers. What weeping messes I make of boys like you. Oh, Vixus, I say with a sigh, keeping the tremble of anger and fear out of my voice. Vixus, Vixus, Vixus. There are no boys like me. I swear to God, I wanted to throw the book against the wall, honestly. They did not just give me the I'm not like other boys line, but yeah. Then Darrow proceeds to basically punch the shit out of Vixus, but says that he did not kill him. Because that's really important this point. But remember, Darrow and his homicidal rages, yeah, it's a problem. So as the story goes on, we are it's made clear to us that, this whole taking slaves thing, is problematic for multiple reasons. Because proportionately, at this point, I start to feel like we're mostly receiving information on deaths or tortures or violent acts towards the female characters, especially also just like unnamed characters. Most of them were just female. Whenever it was about someone dying, getting tortured, getting assaulted, it was most of the time a female NPC, essentially. And we then receive the news or the information that Titus is raping the girls that he has captured and taken for slaves. And I'm probably going to talk more about this, but just as a first thing here, in general, I'm not opposed to stories including stuff like assault or sexual assault or rape, because even though those are problematic, dark, and difficult issues, we need stories about them all to understand them better. However, do not deal with this topic like this book does. Because in this book, stuff like sexual assault and rape is only used to further character motivation, to make character motivation clear, and to further the plot. For example, Titus in this case, Titus is made out to be the super duper bad guy. And that's indicated by him raping the girls that he takes for slaves. Because they're all murderers, they all perpetrate acts of violence, but people like Darrow and Cassius, they're not that bad. The real bad guys rape the women. Like, they're super bad because they rape the women. The other guys, they commit acts of heinous violence, but at least they don't rape the women. This is what this is used for, to really indicate who the real super bad guys are within this already quite violent story. Do we ever hear about the victims of this? Of those acts? Not really. We get like one moment of this later on where we will talk about this, but apart from that, most of these people are unnamed girls where it just keeps getting mentioned that they're being assaulted, that they're being raped. It's all just used to indicate he's the bad guy, and it's used as motivation for Darrow to get really, really angry, for him to be like, oh, we have to do something about Titus because he's doing these really, really bad things to women. Are we going to talk about the women? Are we going to talk about how this heinous act of assault is perhaps a result of the structure they live in, that, something we should talk about, something we should talk to the women about? No, there's no attempt made to go in depth with any of this. It's all surface level. It's all just used as plot devices, as character devices. There's no attempt made to talk about this in an adult, more in-depth fashion. There's no attempt like this whatsoever. So Titus is like this really bad guy. Cassius then challenges Titus to a duel and gets hurt, essentially. And we're told that Cassius, who up until this point has sort of been Darrow's right-hand man, I'm not really mentioning him that much because the secondary characters don't really do that many interesting or important things, and the story is really getting really boring at this point. We're told that Cassius losing this duel against Titus, that this event has changed him. How? I don't know. We're just being told Cassius is a changed man. They talk to a girl from another house to receive information. Of course, again, it has to be remarked how good looking she is, which isn't even that remarkable because all of the girls are pretty, because they're genetically enhanced to look gorgeous. So it's not even that special, and just shows that this writer has a problem with describing female characters. They proceed to so Darrow, Cassius, and his followers, they proceed to attack an outpost by another house, I think, or by one of the other tribes. they get to their base and attack it, and Darrow, he might not take slaves for sexual assault reasons, but he takes a girl named June, throws her over his shoulder and is like, she can cook, and takes her for his tribe. At this point, I was sort of losing attention. I was losing attention to the plot, because again, it just felt like a loosely connected series of events with no transition in between them. So I was just sort of blankly skimming at this point for a good while what was happening. But why not just listen to Vlogging John, who can tell you about this in another clip.
Okay, so I'm like roughly 60% through the book now. And, you know, apart from the fact that, of course, Darrow is still like the best and the greatest and the leader person and everything, the last couple of like 100 pages or so have been really boring, because basically now this has turned into like a really bad and boring version of Hunger Games. Like, they've just been like put into this medieval-ish arena where they're fighting to the death. Like, that's like literally the first thing they do in this institute, in the academy. Nothing taught, no classes, no rules, no nothing. Just throw them in there, see what happens. And all the events that happen in this bit, like, just feel that like they're so disconnected from each other. Like, it's just a loosely connected series of events. Like, it's sometimes really hard to follow what's actually going on in the story. And from what I can gather, what is actually happening in the story, I'm not getting a lot of fun stuff out of it, because, well, this book decided to introduce even more misogyny and sexism via introducing violence towards women. So basically, every female character we've met so far, which aren't that many, to be honest, they're basically reduced to being spoils of war. So in these war games, there's a character who, also others who, when they win something, territory or something, so it's spoils of war, they take the girls, they take the young women from the other groups, and he violently sexually assaults them and rapes them multiple times. And that's just there. And our main character also takes a woman as a spoil of war because she can cook. There's just so much casual misogyny in this that feels very, very iffy. I'm basically just waiting for an unnecessary, unwanted love plot to suddenly develop within this book, which is probably also not going to feel great if that happens. It honestly just feels disgusting, because it's not contextualized whatsoever within the story, and it's mostly used as plot beat, or like as a character beat to be like, oh, that person is really awful, or it's used as motivation for our main character to act. And I don't like it. I really, really don't like it. And so we just have like sexism, violence towards women, misogyny, and it's all within a story that's just been dragging on for the last 100, 150 pages. It's so boring. It has nothing of the dystopian sci-fi anymore that was introduced in the beginning of this book, which was vaguely interesting. So I just hope this bit of the story doesn't last like for much longer, because it's really not doing anything for me.
In chapter 27, we hear that Darrow's castle was taken. This is connected to a girl named Mustang, who we have briefly met before. She's basically like, she's a badass horse girl. She's essentially the only other important female character in this book that is not EO. There There are no other women. There are no other women that are important. Mustang is the only other one that will get in this. If this book was turned into a movie, this would definitely not pass the Bechdel test, just saying. So they talk to Mustang, and Mustang mentions a guy named Jekyll, who we've not heard of before, and all we get essentially, Jekyll is a real bad dude. He's like Darrow, but even better. So that's all we're getting on him at this point. In chapter 28, we get a conversation between Darrow and Rock, and essentially they are now telling us why Cassius can't be leader of House Mars. We're not having this conversation with Cassius, who, this is about, who, we've had multiple events with at this point, but no, we're getting literally told by another character why Cassius can't do this. I love him like a brother, but no. Rock's narrow face tenses as he sets a hand on my arm. Cassius cannot lead this house, not after what happened. Titus's boys and girls might obey him, but they won't respect him. They won't think him stronger than them, even if he is. Darrow, they pissed on him. We are Golds, we do not forget. He's right. I pull my hand, frustration, and glad Rock as though he were being difficult. You don't understand how much this means to Cassius. After Julian's death, he has to succeed. He cannot be remembered solely for what happened. He can't. Why do I care so much? Doesn't matter a flying piss how much it means to him. Rock echoes my words with a smile. His fingers are thin like hay on my bicep. They'll never fear him. So it's nice to have another instance of tell, don't show, where, this seems like pretty important information pertaining to this character who we've spent some time with up until this point. Why are we not having this conversation with him? Why is this not revealed within a conversation between Darrow and Cassius? Why Cassius can't be leader, or why is it not shown within his actions or within the story that Cassius is now a changed man and that he can't be leader? Why am I being told this by a completely different secondary character in a completely different, unrelated conversation? I don't know. So we then receive some information on why Titus is such a wanker, let's put it like that. And Titus explains that a girl he liked, was in love with, was raped in front of him by some other Golds. And because of his phrasing, because remember there's some slight language differences between the Golds and the Reds, because of his phrasing, the way what words he's using, Darrow realized that Titus is also a Red. And the people who raped this girl in front of him were Golds. And is this important information? Sort of. Will it be relevant? Not really. Does it create a bunch of questions? Yes, of course. I thought Darrow was the one who's the Red, who's there to infiltrate society. What is Titus doing here? Why is it being revealed that Titus is also a Red in disguise, or Gold in disguise, whatever? Like, this seems like a pretty big thing, but it's not. We're just being told that Titus is also a Red, and you feel like this should be like mind-blowingly important plot-building information, but it's not. And I'm wondering, first off, why isn't this more important? Why isn't this more significant? And why is Titus also a Red? Like, this was Darrow's thing. I thought this was so difficult to sneak a Red into the Gold Society. I thought this was so difficult and hard to do that only Darrow can do it. But no, now we have Titus, who's apparently also secretly a Red. Why is this also confusing and not thought through? So following this, in chapter 29, Darrow decides to finally take care of Titus, which suddenly, super easy. Just knocks him out, deals with him. And Titus now demands a trial by combat. And I think Cassius steps in here, but of course, Titus loses all of this. And Darrow is, after this, preparing to kill Titus. for, all his misdeeds and what he has done. And Darrow proceeds to execute Titus. And if you think this book is not going to try and generate some empathy for the homicidal, violent murder rapist, you thought wrong, because after Titus has been executed by Darrow feels really shitty about what he's done. He feels really, really bad about killing this man, and says that he still sees Titus as his blood brother, and then proceeds to say that he deserved better. I grow cold. This was meant for me, not for my poor brother Titus. If that was ever really his name, he deserved better than this. And this is, honest to God, Red Rising trying to be like, but look, this bad thing happened to Titus, so it explains why he is also a super violent, homicidal rapist who up until this point was literally the worst person ever, who we were supposed to hate, who was out to kill Darrow, who committed all these horrible, horrible deeds. And now Darrow is like, oh no, I actually feel really bad about killing him, and he was secretly a red, and this stuff happened to him, and oh, he was my brother, and actually I should have died in his place, and he deserved better than this. I'm like, no. Fuck off, but no. He's literally a disgusting piece of human garbage who not only killed a bunch of people, but also enslaved women, girls, and raped them multiple times over a period of weeks, if not even months. And now you're telling me he's your brother and deserved better than this? What is wrong with you? Do you maybe want to instead talk about all those women that he enslaved? All those women that he's raped? Do you think maybe they deserve better? Are they your brothers or sisters? Are we talking about them? No. We're going to talk about how the murder rapist gets a whimsy excuse, sad background story that explains why he rapes women? What is wrong with you? What is actively fucking wrong with this book? Like, I swear to God. And little teaser here, if you think this was the only time this book is trying to pull this kind of shit with a rapist character, you thought wrong. Shortly after this, we learn that the Jackal, remember Jackal, this guy who we've never seen of, we've never heard of, but who's supposedly like the real bad dude, who's better than Darrow, we received the information that he is the Arch-Governor's son. And my note was, I wish this meant anything. It's just, this man we've never seen, but is apparently real bad dude, is the son of an important politician. That's all you need to know. In chapter 30, it said that Darrow no longer allows enslavement to happen, and he decides to learn some combat from Cassius. I have another excerpt here for that, because you bet your butt that Darrow is really good at learning combat. After seeing what happened to Titus, I asked Cassius to teach me the blade. I'm an unreasonably fast study. I learn with the straight. I never use my sling blade. It already is like part of my body. The point is not to learn how to use the straight blade, which is much like the razors, but to learn how it will be used against me. I also do not want Cassius to learn how to fight the curved blade. If he ever finds out about Julian, the curve is my only hope. I'm not as proficient in cravat. I can't do the kicks. I learned how to break trackers though, and I learned how to properly use my hands. No more windmill punches, no more foolish defense. I'm deadly and fast, but I do not like the discipline cravat requires. I want to be an efficient fighter. That is all. Cravat seems intent on teaching me inner peace. That is a lost cause. So yeah, not only does Darrow still have major homicidal rage anger issues, but he also picks up combat lust like this. Of course he does. And then we learn that Darrow plans on forging an alliance with House, I have no idea, Diana, Minerva, whatever, the house, a different house which they can use to ally against Mustang, the horse girl. So they proceed to ride into battle, and here again we get like, because it's mostly just boys talking amongst each other, we get again a lot of this you're like a girl, boo comments. And I honestly, at this point let's talk about it, I honestly don't get how in a society in which the Golds are genetically enhanced to be the best, how this kind of sexism still exists. Because everyone is genetically advanced. Everyone has genetic benefits and physical benefits. Boys, girls, everyone in between and outside of the gender binary. Everyone is genetically advanced to be the same. They're all strong. The girls are as strong as the men are as strong as the women. So I don't understand how the society still has these ideas of femme or female or whatever equals weak, equals bad, and keeps making these jokes of, oh, you're fighting like a woman. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. Not only is it annoying, not only is it occurring way too often in this book, it also doesn't make sense within the world building that this kind of society would have this kind of sexism and misogyny if, at least physically speaking, they are all on the same level. They're all worth the same. They're all strong. They're the same. So I don't understand why this exists. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. They managed to like find Mustang, but there's also another Gold who like looks evil and is threatening her. So Darrow is like, oh, Mustang doesn't deserve this, and I guess more or less saves her or keeps her safe. I don't know. Like then we jump to them besieging and fighting over house like Minerva or House Diana. I was again at this point really, really confused as to the progression of the event of what was going on. I have an excerpt here. I honestly do not remember what the context of this excerpt is, but it's a really great example of just like how things progress in this story, especially like when it's about like them fighting or besieging a castle or whatever. And to me, it just, again, like to me, just like a series of events, no connection. It all just flows and you just kind of start like this. So it's just like an excerpt so you can sort of see for yourself what the writing is like when it comes to like them sort of describing how they're moving when they're fighting and all that. The next morning, House Mars's warband finds their bridge across the metas blocked by trees felled in the night. As expected, the warband turns around and rides back to the castle, fearing some sort of trap. The watchman is Phobos, and Deimos cannot see us. They peer down and send smoke signals that there's no enemy in the bar and deciduous woods about the bridge. They do not see us because we have been belly down the same position in the woods 50 yards from the bridge since Black Dawn. Each of my Oathbreakers has a white or grey wolf cloak now. It took a week to find the wolves, but perhaps that was for the better. The hunt creates the bond. My 10 soldiers are a scrappy lot, liars, wicked cheats who would rather ruin their features than be slaves in this game. So a proud, practical, but not very honourable lot. Just the sort I need. Their faces are painted white with bird dung and grey clay, so we have the look of spectral winter beasts as breath billows from our grinning maws. It's just, I don't know. To me, it just reads like grey, mushy clouds, just like I don't know. I think this is in fact from later in the book, but I don't know. I feel like this is a good example of what happens. We're still told though why this attack and all of this stuff is happening, that apparently there are still slaves, even though Darrow said no more enslavements are allowed, but it does still get mentioned now and then that there are slaves. I thought they were disbanded. I thought it didn't happen. I don't know. they encounter a girl who was sent from the Jackal, the bad guy, for Cassius, saying he wants the Reaper in exchange for, I think, weapons. They think Cassius is the Reaper, while in fact Darrow, of course, is the badass Reaper guy. Darrow is then lured outside in the middle of the night, but of course he noticed just in time that it was a trap by Antonia. Remember Antonia? No? Good, because she's not important. They kill Rock's girlfriend and him too. Although him not really, because the girl of course gets violently killed on page and Rock is not killed on page. So of course he's not really dead. Darrow has like a fight with one of the secondary characters. His name is Severo. He's been in this book, but again, all these secondary characters are so boring and one-dimensional. They're not really important. So Darrow has like a fallout with Severo, who wants to get the Jackal, but Darrow doesn't want to at this point. So that's just sort of what happens. In chapter 33, Cassius takes Darrow aside, and it is revealed that Cassius now knows, suddenly, out of nowhere, Cassius knows about the Julian thing, that Darrow is the one who killed Julian in that one-on-one fight, because someone sent Cassius a holo, which I think is like a hologram, like a recording of what happened. And that's how Cassius now knows. They duel, they fight, and Cassius ends up stabbing Darrow in the gut, and that ends part 3. Part 4 opens with chapter 34. Of course, Darrow isn't dead. He gets saved. And who does he get saved by? Of course, by Mustang. He wakes up next to a sleeping Mustang. Apparently, 4 weeks have gone by. If you're wondering what the timeline of all these events are, I have no idea. By the end of the book, it will get mentioned how much time has gone by, and I was like, what? But we'll come back to it. Darrow is like depressed and sad about what's happened. He's like, oh, I've turned into something I hated. Like when Titus died, I became him. And I'm like, not really? Like, you haven't assaulted and raped a bunch of girls? At least it's not what we told us. So no, you're bad, but you're not as horrible as Titus, so what the fuck are you talking about? The book is basically montaging the relationship building between Darrow and Mustang at this point. And she's sort of, I think, coming on to him already. Like they're sitting close, their fingers are tracing, they're staring at each other all the time. So there's already some hints at something might happen. I'll talk more about it later. Then suddenly she gets sick. Why? No idea. She just suddenly gets sick, and he, of course, has to take care of her. And then she gets kidnapped, because of course she gets kidnapped. And Darrow goes to find her, and of course he finds her gagged and in underwear, and a guy sits on her. He's assaulting her. Sexual violence proceeds, because this book has a serious problem with this. And then, of course, Darrow is the fucking White Knight, and he can't bear seeing those dirty men getting their hands all over his girl. So, of course, he goes into a homicidal rage and kills them, because he says he can't bear Mustang's death. And I'm like, how? Why? When? When did this happen? And he just keeps mentioning after he saved her how frail her body is, that she's still sick, that she's apparently real close to death. And I just hate this. Do you get what I mean when I said in the beginning, at some point all of the female characters who get mentioned in this book will just become a sexist or misogynistic stereotype at some point? It will happen. It just will happen. At some point it will happen. Like with Mustang, who didn't have that many appearances up until this point, but up until this point was more or less like a badass fighting horse girl. But now, as soon as she saves Darrow and starts spending time with him, she gets sick and frail and gets kidnapped. Sexual violence. She has to be in underwear. A guy has to sit on her. And of course, Darrow has to be the fucking White Knight and come save her. And no, this is not the only time this will happen. And it's just, I cannot emphasize enough how bloody annoying this kind of stuff is throughout the entire book. It's honestly goddamn horrible. At some point, Darrow is confronted by one of the gazillion boring secondary characters who then reveals that this whole thing has been broadcast, because of course it has, because this has to be like Hunger Games. So not only are there the leaders of the houses watching, the so-called proctors, they are watching, they're like sort of like within the arena in a spaceship essentially watching, but it's also, this whole thing has been broadcast, just so for people to see it. Of course, Darrow is liked and wanted by so many people already who are essentially sort of like sponsors, if we want to apply Hunger Games terms to it. Of course, Darrow is the best and the most interesting person. Then a character comes in who, honest to God, I do not know if we've met him before at this point or who he even is. His name is Fitchner. I want to say he's the leader of House Mars, but I'm honest to God, no, not sure, because this book is very difficult to focus on. And Fitchner talks to Darrow and says that he wants Darrow to let the Jackal win. The Jackal, we all remember who that is, and Fitchner says, hey, Darrow, let this guy win. So as we're about to enter chapter 35, let's have a short intermission with past John reacting to some events.
Oh, and by the way, remember how I was worried about there being an unnecessary sudden romance subplot being thrown into this book? It happened! Yes, it happened. Because of course it did. The main character suddenly starts developing some kind of romantic feelings towards this honestly random secondary character lady who is... she's a cardboard box. She likes horses, saved his life once, and ever since then, he has been her White Knight, saving her from all kinds of different evil men who, of course, want to assault her. And why they like each other is not clear to me whatsoever. And the main character is basically, like, he keeps sort of going on about his wife being like, oh, but what about my wife and Io? Oh, I still have to think about her. But then he's like, oh, yeah, but could also, like, basically do some eye fucking with that other lady. I don't know. Like, the main character occasionally does some lip service for, like, his wife. Just so you, in case you forgot that, you know, she died. And that's the whole thing, why he's here and why he's so tortured about it. But that's not going to hold him back from doing anything. And that's not going to hold him back from developing a stupid love relationship with this horse girl. Hate it. I hate it. Thank you. I'll finish this book now and then never look back on it.
Chapter 35. Fitchner helps to get some medicine for Mustang. Again, it gives Hunger Games vibes. That's all I'm saying. They managed to gather some people for an army. They're called the Oathbreakers, which is what we got in that one excerpt I read to you earlier. And while this is sort of happening, this assault on the next house, on the next group, Darrow then at some point actually starts thinking about kissing Mustang for the first time since he's met her. Mars will take the bait, Mustang whispers to me now. Not so much brain power left in the house. Not with Rogue gone. She chose a place close to me in the snow, so close that her legs stretch along mine, and her face twisted sideways as she lies on her belly, is only inches from my own underneath our white clothes. When I inhale, the air is already warm from her breath. I think this is the first time I've thought of kissing her. I chase the thought away and summon the sight of Eo's mischievous lips. Why Daryl now thinks about Mustang that way? No idea. There's no connection between these two. There's, honest to God, no chemistry between these two whatsoever. There's barely any friendship chemistry between these two characters. Romantic chemistry? Not at all. Mustang already, because of course she did, flirted with Daryl and thought him attractive earlier, like right after she saved him, but now Daryl's also starting to show some interest. Why? I don't get it. There's no reason for this. It comes almost out of nowhere. It's not important. It's not focused on at all. Daryl still keeps thinking about Eo very frequently. We have no idea how much time has actually gone by, so I don't know if it's realistic for him to already develop feelings for another girl again. Why he's developing feelings for another girl, even though he's still thinking about his dead wife that he's doing all of this for. No idea. Feels very awkward. Just feels shoehorned in because, of course, the main female character has to fall in love with the fucking amazing Darrow. There's more... I'm just reading my notes at this point. There's more casual misogyny, as it's described that Darrow, as he falls down or something happens, screams like a girl. Then there's a speech where, no shit, he's like, free them, brothers and sisters. You're also there. And I'm like, so you're basically confirming to me out loud with Darrow's own speech or some character's own speech that only the boys are important. You're only thinking about the boys. It's literally just free them, brothers. ... And girls. Like, what the fuck? Then Darrow proceeds to climb hills near the castle of the House of Mars that they're trying to get to. And of course, Darrow is so good at climbing those hills that seem unclimbable because of his drill work, because he used to be a hull diver, so of course he's so fucking good at climbing these mountains. I strip away my cloak and ball it up. My skin is coated in charcoal. I push the metal tongs into the spaces between the stones. It is like climbing my drill again, except I'm stronger and I'm not wearing a fry suit. Easy. The Pegasus bounces against my chest as I pull myself up. I'm not even panting when I reach the top 6 minutes later. It's just... You want to fucking scream at him to shut the hell up about how good he is at doing things. I got it. You're amazing. You're Gary Stu. Almost nothing goes wrong with you. You're the best and you learn so fast and all the girls love you and you're great. I get it, Darrow. You're so fucking amazing. Then in chapter 36, we're just still hanging out with the group, planning their assault, seeing what they're gonna do. We get a moment here with a character called Tactus, who's gonna come up again later, and he essentially gets a moment of him trying to flirt with a girl, and the girl is like being like, no, I don't like you, and then him doing the classic, you don't like me? Well, fuck you! You're ugly anyway! Even though he just flirted with her. This very toxic man behavior. So here's what happens. As we did when swinging the trap on House Mars, we sneak as close as we dare the night before and bury ourselves in the deep snow. Again, Mustang and I pair off, huddling tight with one another under the snow. Tactus tries pairing with Melia, but she tells him to go slack himself. If you look at it properly, I was trying to do you a favor, he mutters over at Melia as he's huddled down under Pax's smelly armpit. You're about as pretty as a gargoyle's ward, so when else would you get a chance to snuggle with the likes of me, ungrateful sow? Mustang and the other girls snort at their derision. Then the quiet of the night and the chill of the open ice plain bite into us, and we grow silent. The thing is, there's no context for this. There's no narrative reason for this to be here in the way it is, because it is not addressed. It's not framed as a thing that needs talking about. Darrow doesn't judge this behavior. Darrow doesn't say within the narration what he's doing is bad. All we get is Mustang and the other girls snort their derision, which sort of feels undermining in a way of, well, of course the girls are like thinking this is bad. You know, that's sort of what this feels like. Whereas Darrow himself doesn't seem to see the issue here, doesn't say anything about it whatsoever. And it's stuff like this that keeps popping up throughout the book, and it gets no context. There's no deeper analysis. There's no deeper comment on it from Darrow or from any of the other characters in any meaningful way. And I have another excerpt here, because this continues not with the sexism, but with the homophobia as well. Because as I've mentioned, there are, you know, really casual comments along the lines of, oh, he laughs like a girl, boo, weak. But we also get this with men-on-man behavior, that the book is being like, huh, gay, in a bad way. So this happens momentarily just after the scene I just read you. Mustang nudges me. We can just barely see Tactus curled into the hollow of Pax's armpit. The two men snuggle together and wake like lovers, only to flinch away from one another when their ice-crusted eyelids flutter open. Wonder which is Romeo, Mustang whispers, her throat raspy. I chuckle and carve a hole in the roof of our tunnel. And it's literally just a gay joke. This kind of joke was never funny. It was never funny. It wasn't funny in 2014, and it isn't funny now. Why is this here? Why? Am I slightly overreacting to this? Maybe, but when the entire book, when all the 380 pages are full of things like this, you get bloody annoyed by the 50th time it happens. I swear to God. So following this, because we need to move on, following this is the assault on the castle, on like a castle they're attempting to besiege and take over. Darrow sees Mustang fighting a guy and immediately says, I ended him. And I'm like, why? Mustang is a pretty capable fighter. Why did you feel the need to? Okay. After the fight, we receive the news that Tactus, remember the guy we just heard about, that Tactus tried to rape a girl. My note at this point was just, can we please stop? Can we please just stop with all this violence, especially sexual violence towards women? It's so bloody annoying and has no point to it. So yes, Tactus tried to rape a girl. And in this case, we do actually get to hear from the survivor. So Darrow goes to talk to the girl Tactus tried to assault and asks her what should be done. And she says, nothing. Do nothing, because nothing is enough. In the sense of nothing is enough to make up for what happened. But it's essentially, all she says is nothing. I don't want you to do anything with or about the man who tried to rape me. And this is the only time we ever hear from one of the female survivors in this book. It's the only time. How can you go so wrong? Like, I know this book was written by a straight cis guy, but how can you go so bloody wrong? Like, Pierce Brown, what the fucking hell is your issue? But of course, Darrow, being the white knight that he is, still wants to punish Tactus for what he did. And unlike Titus, who he killed for being a rapist, Darrow instead gives Tactus 20 lashes. And then he gives himself 20 lashes as well and says, I'll own it with you. And then he calls the rapist, or attempted rapist, his brother again. So yeah, Darrow proceeds to give them all, including the rapist, a speech as to why they follow him. And this is what happens. You do not follow me because I am the strongest, Paxis. You do not follow me because I am the brightest, Mustangers. You follow me because you do not know where you're going. I do. I motion Tactus to come toward me. He wavers, pale, confused as a newborn lamb. Fear marks his face. Fear of the unknown. Fear of the pain I willingly bore. Fear when he realizes how different he is from me. Don't be afraid, I tell him. I pull him forward into a hug. We are blood brothers, you little shit. Blood brothers. I'm learning. Yes. So instead of fully, punishing this man for what he did, or listening to all the other women, or doing anything remotely appropriate, nope, gives him 20 lashes, say, you're my blood brother, we're all in this together, and you become one of my right-hand man in my army. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen, our hero, who apparently they follow because they don't know where they are going, but he does. Where he's going, no idea. Why the others don't know, beats me. So, for more context on this, feel free to listen to Past John yet again as I complain about what has happened in the past couple of chapters.
Okay, so I'm about 80% through the book now, and all my hopes and dreams that I had about this whole tournament to the death thing not making up the largest part of this book gone down the drain. That's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly what this entire book essentially boils down to now. And I'm so tired of everything at this point. Especially, I'm so tired of all the casual misogyny and sexism and homophobia in this book. Like, there are so many jokes and lines along the lines of, oh, he laughed like a girl, oh, he's so weak, and oh, he's screaming like a woman. Look at him being stupid and feminine. Like, there's so much stuff along those lines. Some of it even verbatim. And also, like, just casual homophobic stuff. Like, for example, there's a passage I read just now where, like, two guys fell asleep and during the night, like, happened to cuddle each other because it was cold. And the narration is like, oh, hey, they woke up discovering that they were lying down like lovers and screamed at the sight of each other when they woke up. And then the main character and his love interest are like, look at them. I wonder which one of them is Romeo. Gay. And you're like, oh my fucking God. I'm pretty sure jokes like this were outdated even in 2014. Honestly, I just can't take it anymore. I'm at a point now where, yet again, some rando asshole secondary character raped another girl or tried to rape another girl, and now they have to deal with him. And there's I can't take it. I'm honestly, I'm so tired of it. I'm so tired of it, and there isn't that much left of the story. I have no idea how any of this is gonna come out good in any way, shape, or form. The basic premise at the beginning of this is basically forgotten at this point. You know, how he was meant to infiltrate this institute and take down the leaders from within. You're not getting any of this in the first book. Basically, this is forcing you, if you have any modicum amount of interest in this story, this is forcing you to read the other books in the series, which I'm probably not going to do. But it's just making me angry because I'm not saying that you can't write stories that include, heavy themes like misogyny, sexism, sexual assault, rape, whatever, violence. I'm not saying that you can't include stuff like this, but it's not addressed, it's not dealt with, it's not contextualized within the actual book in any way, shape, or form. nothing like it. All this does is being used as plot devices, as character development for the male main character. This book doesn't remotely care about the actual importance and depth and complexity that such heavy topics include and need talking about. Nothing like this whatsoever. And I'm gonna be so glad when I'm finished with this. I just want to escape this. Honestly, I just want to escape this at this point. I hate Darrow. He's such a fucking piece of arrogance. And every femme character in this book is basically a piece of cardboard who exists to either be assaulted or to be some kind of motivation for the male characters. And I'm tired. I'm so tired of this. I'm like 80% in. I'll update you when I'm done. But yeah, I'm tired of this, and I'm glad I'm done soon.
So after all of this happened, of course, Mustang takes care of Darrow and she takes care of his wounds. Then Darrow goes on a pee break and, of course, runs into a trap. You know, for being apparently the smartest character, this man runs into like 2 or 3 traps in this. And it's, even though they're really obvious. And he is confronted by Proctor Apollo. So he's the head of house, essentially, of Apollo. And he wants him to come with him. And as they walk together, Apollo eventually just basically betrays, I guess, Darrow and throws him down a ditch where there is a great big bear. So he just throws Darrow to a bear. Then immediately, without any tension whatsoever, Severo, that one random secondary character who's really into wolves, pops up, jumps in, and we don't even really understand what happens, but, you know, Darrow is safe from the bear immediately, and we're back to camp. So that's all the excitement gone. Apollo then visits them yet again, but this time they trick him very easily and manage to overpower him. We then get a battle for the house of Apollo. It takes less than 30 minutes for them to conquer the house. In anger, that's just like a little thing, in anger, Darrow throws like a spear or something at the proctors or like at their ship where they're sitting, even though that's like taboo and no one should ever do that, and everyone's been warning everyone else, especially Darrow, about doing this. But of course, everyone loves Darrow for doing this. In chapter 39, Fitchner returns and he gives Darrow a stern talking to, but Darrow, of course, is like, fuck off, I know what I'm doing. And then he's like, I know why you're trying to keep me from like doing this. Severo is your son. So yeah, Fitchner is Severo's dad. It's not important. It honestly isn't. Fitchner warns Darrow of a girl that could still potentially betray him. Hint, there's only one girl who's that important who could betray him. Take a wild guess. And then Fitchner gets the shit beaten out of him and they essentially arrest him and keep him as a prisoner. Chapter 40. We're like 4 or 5 chapters away from the ending. Chapter 40. Darrow wants to take down House Jupiter before they take on the Jackal. House Jupiter essentially more or less surrenders. So once again, no problem for Darrow whatsoever. He's always successful. He randomly here mentions something about how much, I'm trying to find the exact, how much time has gone by, which took me a bit by surprise. Because this is what he says. I miss the small cod I used to share with Io. She's been dead now longer than we were married. I'm surprised how much it hurts to realize that. I think I'm 18 now, Earth metric, not rightly sure. Darrow was 16 in the beginning of this. 2 years have gone by? I did not get that from the progression of the story, because there's no real attempt made to explain to you how much time has actually gone by, like in what time span all of this is happening, but apparently roughly 2 years. I don't know, that's not the impression I was getting. I was assuming, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 months had gone by, not 2 years. But yeah, apparently 2 years have gone by. Good to know. Daryl goes to talk to one of the guys who gave up House Jupiter. He's called Lucien or something. The book acts like we should know who he is, or like he's really important. And if he was, I did not remember. Again, this entire book is just like one read, essentially going by events. And they attack each other, but Daryl manages to overpower him and like pins his hand with a knife to the desk so Lucien can't escape. It's then revealed in chapter 41 that Lucien is actually the Jackal. How, what, why, when, where, what any of this means, no idea, it's not important. I have not been following anything this closely for a long time. Like, it's honestly escaped my attention long ago. Jackal tries to negotiate with Darrow. So basically says that, you get great power and high positions in the political order if you let me go. And I'm like, great, that's exactly what Darrow needs. That's exactly what was the whole point of this rebellion, that he can gain power, that he gets a high political position so he can infiltrate society and take it down from within. This is exactly what Darrow needs and wanted. And then Darrow is like, no. And I was like, are you fucking stupid? I kind of understand that, you kind of maybe want to win this, but this man is literally offering you power and high positions within the political order of the Golds. This is exactly what you were sent here to do. This is exactly what you want. This is exactly the plan that you have made with the rebellion. Get a position high within the political order so you can take down the Golds. And then Darrow says no. And I'm like, I thought you're so fucking cool and clever. Why are you not agreeing to this? Like, fuck all of these other people. You don't even care about them. You said you don't care about the Golds. So why are you now saying no to this? Doesn't make sense. Then, because of a weird verbal agreement, the Jackal manages to escape because Darrow said something along the lines of, well, you will only be able to get out of here if you cut your hand off, because, he stuck his hand with a knife to the table. And then Jackal just proceeds to do that. He cuts off his hand and is let free. And Darrow is like, well, no, I did say that, so he's allowed to leave now. And I'm like, you fucking stupid, get him! He's like the one bad guy you still need to get. So the Jackal then proceeds to kill Pex, who was, again, one of those secondary characters who was mentioned throughout the book but wasn't really all that important. Ooh, it's sad. So Jackal kills him, detonates a bunch of bombs, there's a lot of chaos, and he realizes then that Mustang earlier, as he was talking to Jackal, he sent Mustang away because she was being an annoying woman. Mustang actually wanted to tell him something about Jackal. And Darrow now realizes that. At this point, the proctors, so the house leaders, get involved. They support Jackal. They want Darrow to lose, and in order to put some pressure on him, they take Mustang. Mustang gets yet again kidnapped, and Darrow is supposed to lose against Jackal if he wants to have Mustang back, essentially. And it's like, great! Another misogynistic sexist stereotype with the damsel in distress. This will get lampshaded later, and it's gonna be a funny scene. But yes, once again, Mustang, who is supposedly the super badass fighting horse girl, is yet again reduced to being kidnapped so Darrow can come save her. Again, these female characters are not real characters. They eventually just become plot beats and character beats that serve the development of the male main character. There's nothing else to these women. They're all being reduced to misogynistic stereotypes. Fucking hell, this is annoying. Darrow, because he's annoyed by this as well, I guess, ends up killing the Apollo Proctor. And then he says something along the lines of, like, a bad American action movie. He's like, oh, they took Mustang, now someone has to take Olympus. So with that sentiment, we go into chapter 42. And if you thought, yet again, that Darrow couldn't even go deeper into the I'm so fucking great thing. Oh no, he can, because Darrow compares himself to Alexander the Great. The Proctors have played their games. They pushed and pushed for so long. They knew I was something dangerous, something different. Sooner or later they had to know I would snap and come to cut them down. Or perhaps they think I'm still a child. The fools. Alexander was a child when he ruined his first nation. Yes, Darrow being so fucking full of himself, it's great. Yeah, so Darrow wants to confront Olympus, so the leaders of the 12 houses. Why the Proctors aren't aware or reacting to one of them getting murdered? I don't know, I feel like they should get out of there. So they attack Olympus, they attack this ship where they're all staying. And of course they all take them down surprisingly easily. And of course, there's more sexual violence against women because the leader of House Venus is a woman. And as they take her down, she is stripped half naked, tied up in her underwear next to an open door so she has to feel the cold. Does this happen to any of the other Olympus characters who they defeat? No. Is she the only woman among those leaders who this happens to? Yes. Is this over-sexualized violence yet again because for some reason she has to be stripped half naked and tied up? Yes. Is this called out by anyone? No. Why should it? Then we basically proceed into the final battle, which is against a character we have not met up until this point, not even really heard of. Like, basically it's just Darrow fighting against Jupiter, like the leader of House Jupiter, the house teacher. And then Severo helps Darrow take him down. Surprisingly easily. Anticlimactic? Yes. Was this build up towards? Not really. So they end up finding Mustang, and this is where we get the lampshading of, you know, her being a damsel in distress, because this is literally what she says when Darrow finds her. She groans, "I've become the maiden in distress, haven't I? Slag, I hate those girls." Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, just because you're lampshading the problem doesn't mean it's no longer a problem. Fuck off with this. You know exactly what you're doing. And you putting in a line like this does not make it better. It does not excuse it. It does not explain it. It just makes it worse. And I'm so fed up at this point. So, with her saved, Darrow, even though he's still thinking about Io, ends up kissing Mustang. She tastes like smoke and hunger. How you taste like hunger, I'm not sure. Then we get the big reveal, because remember how Fitchner said, oh hey, there's this one girl who still could potentially betray you. It's Mustang. Fitchner reveals that Mustang is Jekyll's twin sister. Because of course she is. We had something, need to have something like that. It's not really hinted at throughout the story, but it's also not that big of a surprise, because honestly, I was expecting something like this to probably happen at some point. The problem is that Mustang has gone off at this point. Like when Darrow receives this information, he's sent her off to deal with Jekyll. And now he's like, oh shit, I've sent her to her twin brother. She's probably gonna betray me. And he honestly just immediately assumes that. Like, even though he's hung out with this girl for a long time, has had a crush on her, he's kissed her just now, he honestly just thinks, oh fuck, she's gonna betray me, isn't she? So he prepares to finally storm House Mars. He does. It's easy. We're reunited with Rock, the poet character who, we thought was dead, but of course wasn't. Darrow meets up with Cassius, who is basically described as a broken man at this point. Cassius leaves House Mars to Darrow, basically just tells him to go fuck himself. And now the only house left is Jekyll's house, House Pluto. And now we go to the final chapter, chapter 44. Darrow prepares for a full frontal assault and rocks up there with his entire army. Mustang comes out, brings him Jekyll, and it's all over. Yeah. Was that easy? Mustang didn't betray him. She just comes out and is like, hey, here, caught my twin brother for you. Done. All that tension we built up for not even one chapter immediately resolved with. No tension, no fighting, no nothing. Darrow has taken over House Pluto, has conquered the final house, and Darrow has won this death tournament. At the end of all this, the director and the arch-governor are coming in to, congratulations on all that. Darrow receives a badge from, I think, the director or the arch-governor, and he can now choose a good apprenticeship to go forward. So he has now all the opportunities laid out to him. And they are about to be sent home, essentially. At sort of like the basically like end of the year party or whatever, the congratulatory party, Darrow is approached by the arch-governor. Remember, the man he doesn't like, who he really wants to kill. And the arch-governor has issues with Darrow because Darrow wasn't supposed to win, and of course Jekyll was like the Jekyll and Mustang are the kids of the arch-governor and all that. And the arch-governor is essentially proposing to buy Darrow's silence. He's like, you can have whatever you want. You can have the best position. You can have all the women. You can have all the education. You can have all the money, all the power you want. But you have to stay quiet and you have to join my household. And Darrow is like, well, I'm something different. So I'm special. I'm going to do this a bit differently, maybe than everyone's expected. And Darrow swears himself to the arch-governor, and this is how the book ends. Darrow, Lancer of House Augustus, rise, there are duties for you fill. Rise, there are honors for you to take. Rise for glory, for power, for conquest, and dominion over lesser men. Rise, my son, rise. And now, as a final word, let's go back one more time to past John reacting to finishing Red Rising.
Okay, so finished the book, and I audibly sighed in relief when when I was finally done, I was so unbelievably angry with this book in the last like 5 chapters or so. I really, like, for a minute I was thinking, I just don't finish it. Just don't finish it. Forget about it. But yeah, pushed through, unfortunately. Yeah, it's just the ending is basically full of the exact same shit that I was worried about. Oh, there was a guy. I don't remember. I mentioned him in the last clip. So he raped a girl and then was put on trial. And this time, instead of straight up killing the rapist, this time it's okay. He gets like 20 lashes on the back. It's like, don't do this again in my house. And the girl he assaulted is like, don't do anything to him. Because it doesn't change anything. Just don't do anything to him. I'm like, what? What? And then, yet again, Darrow calls the rapist his brother. You know, not to bring out cliche jokes, but if I had a penny for every time the main character called a rapist in this book his brother, I would have 2 pennies, which is not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Like, I swear to fucking Christ. So after that, of course, there's some seeming betrayal, but then of course it isn't, by the main love interest, who's revealed to be like the twin sister of someone important, and you're like, oh no, and then it's resolved within like 1 chapter, and it's like, no, it's fine. Then of course she manages to get kidnapped again right at the very end. The love interest girl manages to get kidnapped right at the very end, and then when she gets saved, she literally says something along the lines of, oh, I've been such a damsel in distress, fuck, I hate girls like that. Fuck it. That's literally what she says. You're like, oh, fuck off. Lamp trending doesn't make this any better. It really doesn't. There are, I swear to God, right up until the last chapter, there are lines still that are like, stop being such a girl and be a man. No kidding, really. Right up until the last chapter, there's stuff like this. And then they like storm, not the capital, they call it Olympus, and they just take down all the leaders of, basically, of the houses. Just like that, no problems, nothing, absolutely nothing. There isn't really like a final battle or something. Like, basically, the sort of final battle in order to save Mustang, the girl, it's against a guy who we've never seen before. He's basically like the head of all the houses, Jupiter. But then he's defeated relatively easily, and they save Mustang, and it's fine. And, you know, that's sort of it. That's sort of it. And then, you know, the betrayal, but not betrayal, and Mustang is just like, oh no, I didn't betray you, and here's the one guy you still had to defeat, you didn't need to do anything, and Darrow's won. Feels rather anticlimactic to a certain degree. And then, of course, at the end, like, all the politicians come in. They're like, oh, you've done so well, but also, you defeated all the Olympus leaders. You weren't supposed to do that, but you still have a lot to look forward to. And then, of course, like, the major bad guy, who hasn't been in the book since the very beginning, essentially, since before Darrow entered school, is like, I will buy your silence, because essentially, like, everyone in this game cheated, right? And he, the main bad guy, the arch governor, was responsible for it. It's like, Darrow, don't talk to anyone about this, about the cheating. I will give you anything you want in order for you to shut your mouth, but if we do that, you have to become a member of my household. And Darrow, who, of course, his goal this whole time, as we're now reminded at the very end of the book, is to, you know, infiltrate the higher ranks of this society. And he's like, okay, yes, I swear my fealty to you and enter your household. And that's how the book ends. And it's exactly as I predicted it. This book essentially forces you to, I don't know, like forces you to read the rest of the series if you want to know how anything is resolved, because nothing is resolved in this book. The main premise that, oh, he's gonna like infiltrate this institute so he can take down society from within. There's none of that. None of that. This entire book, 3/4 of this book, just is him doing a very bad tournament to the death. And that's it. That's absolutely it. Has nothing to do with why he came there in the first place. Like, fuck off. And again, of course, the series, like, they want you to, like, read the rest of the series, but I'm like, I don't want to. I hate this main character so much. I hate how women are being treated in this, and I'm done. Obviously, I have much more to say. The video you're watching right now is probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours long. We'll see. But yeah, I am very, 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 very angry with this book. Hate the main character. Hate all the casual misogyny, sexism, and homophobia. And honest to God, I could not see how people are so obsessed with this book. I honestly just can't, and I'm glad I'm finally done with this.
So at the end of it all, let's do some final analysis. Red Rising. Obviously, I hated it. Obviously, I very much disliked it. I explained it to you over the past 2.5 hours. So let's do some final conclusion here. The writing, I personally don't like it. It's written in this very dry, edgy, staccato style of writing, which I'm personally just not a fan of whatsoever. Like, the entire book is written in this narrational style, which irritated the hell out of me. Like, it makes it easier to read and easy to get through, but also makes it so everything just sort of becomes one and sort of like melts into each other, which just made me skim through some of the reading, essentially making me probably miss some important bits. I don't know, but I also honestly don't care. Another thing with the writing that you didn't get to see really that much here in the excerpts is that there are these words within the writing which are like combined nouns, but they are capitalized like very weirdly. So there are words like, hang on, like swing blade, high color, and graph boots, and then I'm putting them on screen, and they're all spelled like this. And they're throughout the entire book, all the time. And it honestly just irritated me because I didn't understand why they were spelled that way. There wasn't really an explanation for this, and it just kept happening. Because this book in general has like some shticks that just keeps repeating over and over again within the language or within the writing, and if you find them annoying, then you're not gonna have a good time with this, because like you get stuff like this with the weird words. Same goes for the swear words, some of which are made up. Like gory damn is said so many times in this book, which is sort of like the essential swear word for the golds, which just gets repeated over and over and over again. Like in general, this book has a big repetition problem. Like it keeps repeating the same words, it keeps repeating the same swearing, it keeps repeating the same like plot beats and character beats for Darrow. Like, I got it. Yes, he's amazing. Yes, he's thinking about his wife. Yes, they're fighting again. Yes, someone's getting raped. Like, it's just the same things getting repeated over and over again. There's no variety to them, no depth. And I'm like, yes, I got this sentiment the first 10 times Darrow was thinking about them. I was not a big fan of the writing style in and of itself already, but also the way in which it presents the story did not work for me whatsoever, because the beginning is actually quite interesting, you know, starting off in the caves of Mars and seeing what a helldiver does and all that, and that's all cool. But as soon as Io gets fridged, the story just takes a nosedive, because you just hate that everything hinges on this stupid stereotype of a fridged female character who's dying in order to motivate the male main character. It all hinges on that. And if you thought, hey, we're doing like this whole sci-fi dystopia thing in the beginning, it becomes less and less and less as the story goes on. Like, it takes even more of a nosedive once Darrow is in the arena, because till then, you've had some dystopian sci-fi elements, you know, the hell-diving element, the drills, the weird society, there's some technology, genetically enhanced people, but then it becomes less and less and less, and by the time we enter the arena and we do all of that stuff, there are no more sci-fi elements, no more dystopian elements. It's really just this group of people hanging out in an almost fantasy medieval adjacent arena with castles and horses and swords, just fighting each other, besieging castles, having duels. And it does not read like a sci-fi dystopia whatsoever. Like, if you pick up this book because you're really into like the sci-fi aspects of this, or the dystopian aspects of this, you're not getting them. You're getting them for like the first 10 chapters maybe, but that's it. Like, that would be really disappointing to me, because I mean, it was to me, like, even though like sci-fi dystopia is not like my favorite genre, it's still a genre I very much enjoy. Like, heck, I wrote my master's thesis about dystopias, essentially. And then you just get this, which has almost nothing to do with it anymore for large parts of the book. I would honestly be really, really disappointed if I was a big fan of like sci-fi dystopias. Of course, it has a death tournament, which of course reminds us immediately of Hunger Games, even though it's nothing like Hunger Games whatsoever, and also I think is a disservice to Hunger Games, because just like so many other stories, this book does not understand what made the death tournament or the battle royale in Hunger Games so special, what makes the violence in Hunger Games work, because in this, just like it happened in Fourth Wing or in Serpent and the Wings of Night, these stories are just including violence for the sake of violence, because they want to be like, oh look, violence is bad and awful because violence is inherently bad. But that's it. There's no deeper theme to it. Like, the violence in Hunger Games has a point. It has a specific point it's trying to make. It has to do with the culture and the structure all of this story is based on. There is a point to the violence in Hunger Games apart from the violence being violent. It's not, while it is used as a shock factor, there is more to it. But in this story, it's not. It's all just there to be like, oh look how bad these people are, that they are committing these heinous crimes, and that's why they're bad. The story just meanders. There is a plot, but it all just hinges on events happening one of the other with like no real connection, leading to a absolutely horrendous pacing. Like, for large chunks of this, in the middle of it, as you could tell, I was bored. I just signed off probably for like a good couple of chapters in this book, where I just didn't care for what was happening. There's like nothing exciting going on. There are no surprises, like, because everything works out for Darrow in some way, shape, or form. Everything will work out for Darrow in the end. Like, all the events just feel the same. He has this plan. They're besieging a castle. There are hordes of people fighting. Then they talk about tactical moves. Rinse, repeat, do this all over again. Darrow is the best. Darrow will eventually succeed. And speaking of Darrow, this story is sort of based on this mission that he has, right? That he is recruited by the rebellion, by Ares or whatever, to become one of the Golds and to infiltrate their society, to take them down from within. This entire premise is completely forgotten. By the time Darrow enters the Institute, by the time Darrow enters the school, this entire premise is completely forgotten. This entire story, as you could tell, had nothing to do with Darrow infiltrating society, the Gold Society, and taking it down from within. Like, I'm so annoyed that this book decided to do the death tournament, because what I was hoping this would be is like, oh, Darrow like becomes one of the Golds and has to learn the ins and outs of Gold Society and has to infiltrate their families and their relationships and has to learn how to adjust, and slowly he maybe loses himself, and it becomes more of a question of who is Darrow still who he needs to be, or is he becoming more one of the Golds as he's losing himself in this fight? Nothing. It's nothing. It's completely forgotten about. You can forget about this exploration. It's not important to the overall story, and kind of hate that this essentially forces you to pick up the rest of the series, because this entire premise of, oh hey, Darrow's infiltrating the Gold Society and taking it down from within is not in this book, so you have to sort of you're forced to read the second and third book if you want to know how this theme gets addressed, because it does not get addressed whatsoever in this book. And of course we have like this minor subplot of like a romance between Darrow and Mustang, which I've already mentioned is completely useless. It's so stupid. It has no reason to be there, because Darrow, for basically the entirety of this book, is like still going on about his wife. He's still grieving. He's still thinking about her. He keeps mentioning her, and his relationship with Mustang is not built up whatsoever. Like, it's described that they're talking, then we like basically montage them bonding, but there's no reason for them to develop romantic chemistry. I have no idea why they like each other romantically. For Mustang, I get it, because of course she's the one female character, so of course she has a crush on Darrow, who's a male main character. Why Darrow likes Mustang? No idea, especially while he still keeps simping for his dead wife. It has no reason to be there. It feels very shoehorned in. Just feels like, okay, of course we have to get main girl and main guy together because the stories are like this. But I'm like, why? You don't need it. You're barely paying attention to it throughout your writing anyway, so why is it here? In terms of world building, this is nothing all that special. If you've read one popular dystopian novel, you've sort of read this book. Like, the color system is nothing all that new. It's very reminiscent of stuff like Hunger Games or Divergent. And while it did have the potential to be interesting, it never really went that much in depth with it. It's mostly just relying on golds equal bad elitist assholes, reds equal underdog slave that you're supposed to root for. And that's it. There's no real exploration of any of the other casts, of the other colors. The only other color that sort of gets mentioned is maybe the pinks, who are the sex workers, but even they are not all that important. Like, this entire system has potential to be really interesting, but it's not explained whatsoever. It's just said the golds are in charge and everyone works for the golds. I'm like, why? If the golds are so evil, how are they oppressing society? How are they keeping everyone in charge? How are they keeping how does anything work? Why are the golds in power? How are they keeping their power? Like, this also has to do with why are the reds are the only ones who are kept in secret about what's going on Mars. And my question is, why? If the golds are already subjugating every other color that's below them, why are the reds the only ones who don't know about what's going on? All the other castes know what's going on and that the golds are in charge and they should potentially hate them, but they're not kept in the dark. Only the reds are kept in the dark. Why? Because all this does is create feelings of animosity, of hatred, of rebellion. And this is exactly what we see happening in this. So why are the Reds the only ones being isolated? Why aren't the Golds, like, I don't know, using their power or using state propaganda to create like happy slaves or something? Why is this not a thing? And I already mentioned this earlier, why are the Reds the only ones, essentially the only ones that are rebelling? Like, all the other colors have reasons to rebel against the golds, especially like people like the pinks, who are the sex workers, who are very heavily exploited by the golds. But no, only the reds. Why? No idea. So this entire society has sort of like an ancient Rome, ancient Greece theme going on that is potentially interesting. My question is, why? Why does it have this theme? Like, it's never explained as to why the society has developed so closely to, like, you know, aspects of ancient Rome and ancient Greece culture. This is never explained. It just happens to be there. And I'm purposefully mentioning both Rome and Greece because both aspects sort of get muddled together in this, which is already irritating enough. But then again, there are also aspects of like the system of the society that have nothing to do with this. So we do have like proctors, and all the houses are named after, like, you know, Apollo, Diana, Venus, or whatever. But then we also have people like the arch governor. And I'm like, why are the arch-governors? Why are you not fully going with the entire theme we've established? So that was confusing and what was not thought through well enough, and it wasn't even consistent throughout the book. Let's talk about characters. You can't even talk that much about characters because there's only really one character who's important, Darrow. Fuck Darrow. I hate this guy. He's everything I hate about stereotypical male main characters in books or YA books or whatever. This isn't even really a YA book. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Darrow is just the worst. This boy could not shut the fuck up about how amazing he is. He would always mention in some way, shape, or form that he's special, that he's different, that he's doing this thing faster, that he's learning this so much quicker than everyone else, that he's no problem adjusting. He's doing this because, of course, he has this special knowledge that no one else has. This is going on throughout this entire book. Not only is he doing this, which is already bad enough because he's the one telling us the story, people around him also keep doing this. Like, there are people who like keep saying stuff like, oh wow, how did you do this? I've never seen anyone else do this. And wow, you're so special. Oh wow, you picked this up real quick. Like, you just want to throw this book against the wall for hitting you over the head with how fucking special Darrow is. And remember, he's only like supposed to be 16 years old, but of course already at this age he's he's not only the youngest Helldiver, but he's also the best Helldiver. And now for some reason people want him to be the chosen one of the revolution, even though there's nothing special about him. He didn't even want to be a member of the rebellion, but now they just decide, yep, he's the one. Why? Beats me. And also everything basically succeeds. Everything Darrow touches or plans succeeds at some point. Like, even when he makes tiny mistakes, those mistakes will be good because he will meet some other useful character, or at a later point in time those consequences of his mistake will turn out to actually be good. Like, all his plans are good. He never really truly fails anything. Everyone likes him, and the people who dislike him are either very clearly the bad guys, or they will come around to that and will realize, oh, they were actually wrong to dislike Darrow because he is the hero of the story. Like, we see this with Cassius, for example, who Darrow sort of has a friendship with. Then they have like their falling out, and Cassius hates Darrow. But then, of course, at the very end, Cassius just surrenders to Darrow because he has to admit, yeah, Darrow was the better leader all along, and so it's like, yeah, fuck off. But even though I admit that you're basically like, it's that like, everyone just loves him. Everyone loves him, and those who don't will eventually. This especially also applies for the few female characters we get in this, especially Mustang. But yeah, Darrow is just the absolute fucking best, and also Darrow just doesn't change throughout this entire book. Like, I've seen so many people who praise this book mention that he's such a complex character and goes through such an interesting character development. I'm like, have we read the same book? Because I don't see that complex character development. Like Darrow is an entitled wanker in the beginning of this book, and he's an entitled wanker at the end of this. He's the best at the beginning, he's the best at the end. There's nothing that changes about him. Yeah, sure, like in between, he will always think stuff like, oh no, Io wouldn't like seeing me now, or he will think something along the lines of, oh, I hate perpetrating this violence, but then he just moves right past those feelings and does all the shit anyway, without really considering any of the stuff that he's apparently thought about or that's worrying him. He's not thinking about it. He doesn't consider it. It doesn't come back to bite him in the arse. He's just still exactly the same character. There's never a point in the story where you think, oh, maybe he's in too deep. Maybe he's becoming too much of a gold. Maybe he's lost his morality. No. He's still exactly the same person that he is in the beginning of this book. There's no change to him. He never truly has to compromise who he is or what he believes in, even though he will think shit like this, but then ignores those feelings and moves right along, and there are no consequences, and he just stays the same, and it all doesn't matter because Darrow is a Gary Stu and he's the fucking best. All the secondary characters are basically not important. They're all like red cardboard boxes who might as well not exist. Like, they have names. I remember some of them, but they're not important. They're just like there to provide plot beats or provide character motivation. Like, they're the bad ones who motivate Darrow to do shit. They're the ones who help him learn combat that he's eventually going to become really good at, and nothing else really. There are very few female characters, basically none, except EO and Mustang, and EO dies 5 chapters in, and Mustang's the only other one that remains. And the few female characters we get are not important and are all eventually at some point reduced to sexist and or misogynistic stereotypes. The only 2 secondary characters who were sort of interesting, I guess, or sort of people talk about, were Cassius, who like had the potential to be interesting, but then he just kind of feels like a stereotypical pretty boy with combat skills, and he just happens to be the one Gaul who's maybe not this bad, apart from Mustang maybe. But then like he clashes with Darrow, disappears for like a good chunk of the novel, and then that's it. And then he's apparently a broken man. Why? How are we going to develop it? Go in depth with it? Not really. So Cassius, not that important either. And then a lot of people are going on about Severo. I was like, why? Essentially, you don't even know who Severo is because I barely mentioned it because he's not really that important to the story. He's like a wolf boy, essentially. And I was like, cool. But I don't care about him. He's just as one-dimensional as all these other secondary characters that I do not care about. And then, of course, there's Mustang. We already talked about Mustang. Mustang is, I don't know, Darrow's trophy girlfriend? Damsel in distress? I don't know. She's made her to be like this really badass horse girl who she also like kind of is in the beginning of this whole death tournament. But as soon as she spends more time with Darrow, she is reduced to being a damsel in distress. She becomes frail. She becomes sick. She gets kidnapped multiple times. She is a victim of assault and sexual violence multiple times. Darrow also always has to be her white knight and save her. She just becomes character motivation for Darrow so he can be a badass and come save her. She never gets herself out of these situations, even though we're told she is a badass fighter. So even the one cool badass girl is essentially reduced to a sexist stereotype. Like, we already spoke in detail about all the problematic shit while we spoke about the chapters, so I just want to highlight some few things here. Again, there's so many problematic sexist and misogynistic stereotypes for women in this book. EO is fridged 5 chapters into the story. She becomes nothing but sole motivation for the male main character. Her death is the only thing he keeps thinking about. There's nothing else to her character. Mustang, even though she is written to be badass, becomes nothing else than a damsel in distress who is put into compromising and dangerous situations just so Darrow can come save her. There's so much casual but also explicit violence towards women, which always just keeps getting mentioned, that they're assaulted, that they're raped, and there's no context for this within the book. It's all just there to serve as character development. It's there to serve as plot beats. It's there to be like, to differentiate the bad guys from the relatively good guys, because, you know, the good guys might be killers, but the bad guys are also killers, and they rape the women. Like, that's it. There's no context for this. There's no focus on, you know, what do the victims and the survivors of all these horrible deeds think about this. There's nothing like this in this book. The one time it does happen, the survivor says, oh, don't do anything. And you're like, what the fuck? And the rapists, their behavior is trying to be, it's excused, they're trying to apologize for it, they're trying to raise sympathy for these people by giving them, like, I don't know, like sad background stories, or by Darrow just trying to be like, oh yeah, no, I understand why they are like this, but I shouldn't punish them too harshly for this. And you're like, what the fuck are you trying to do here? These are murderous rapists. You hate these people. These are the people you hate. You specifically came here for to take down. Why is this book trying to raise sympathy for these rapists? I do not need this. I do not want this. Why are you doing this? It's already bad enough that you have all this casual misogyny, sexism, violence, and rape, but then you also try to make me sympathize with the people who are perpetrating all of this violence towards women? No, thank you. Fuck off. And the final thing that's sort of like a problematic thing that has actually nothing to do with the book itself, or with the story, it's people being weird about the author, especially women. Like, what is up with people thirsting, outright thirsting for Pierce Brown? Like, I looked up reviews on Goodreads, and I'm just looking at my notes. Like, there are people who are writing reviews mentioning what a piece Pierce Brown is, how handsome and good looking he is. That there are people who, like, outright bought this book just because they thought the author portrait was sexy. I saw one review that included like pictures of Pierce Brown highlighting his physique, how hench he is. And I was like, can you not? You realize you're not only being very cringe, you're also being kind of weird and uncomfortable? Like, thirst for the book characters if you want, but we do not need the book thirst to jump over into the real world and thirst for the author. It honestly felt really weird, and I don't even know what else to say about that. Okay. That's it. This is it. There are so many more things I could probably talk about with this book, but I'm so exhausted. This book made me so angry. Like, it's one thing for a book to be just bad, like badly written. There's one thing for a book to be bad because it has annoying characters, because it has a boring story, because it's unengaging. But for a book to be badly written and offensive, like, fuck off, fuck right off. I'm not taking this. And I know there are more books to the series, and I know some people have said, oh, it gets even better in book 2 and 3. I don't care. This book was already supposed to be quite good. Like, if I'm taking a look at Goodreads, this has a 4.27 star rating on Goodreads with 448,000 ratings. This was already supposed to be good. Heck, this won award for the best debut of 2014. Why? I don't know. I'm certainly not seeing it. I also don't understand why this is why this was nominated for best young adult fantasy. Why so many people are advertising this as young adult? Because it isn't. It really isn't. The main character might be 16 years old. He does not talk like a 16-year-old. And all the violence and rapes and assaults and all other problematic stuff that are being depicted in this, don't read this. Don't read this as YA. If anything, this is maybe 16 plus, but definitely not classic YA, meaning, I don't know, 12 to 18 year olds. I would not give this to my 14-year-old child if I had one. Please don't. And I just don't understand. I honestly don't understand how this is so popular. Is this people who have read this like in 2014 and maybe at the time some of these problems weren't as well known yet within reader spaces? Is this people being like, oh, they really like the rest of the series, so they're also retroactively enjoying this first book? I can't tell you why. I do not understand. I honestly do not get it. This book made me so unbelievably angry. And it might arguably be the worst book we've read so far in the series, because yes, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame were annoying, but they were annoying because they were just really badly written and full of plot holes and bad characters. This book also has all of that, plus it's super duper offensive and outdated. And I do not need this. I honestly to God do not need this. And I'm so tired. I do not care for if the other books in the series are great. I don't want to read this. I don't want to read this kind of writing where you can just tell a straight cis man wrote this. And I mean this in the worst possible interpretation that you can think of. I'm not saying this is a general thing, but it's a thing that happens with a lot of authors of this type. This is the kind of shit you get. And I do not want this. I do not need this. I do not understand why people love this. If you love this book and watch this entire review, first off, thank you. Second off, please, if you love this book, do tell me in the comments down below why you enjoy this. I honestly would love to know what you love so much about this book, and if it maybe does honestly get better. And I don't know. I'm just tired and my voice is gone, as you can probably tell. Yeah, I hated this. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. There's a very extensive review for this book on my Goodreads and on my Storygraph, if you want to check that out, or if you want to follow me there. So, yeah, this is it for this review. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it all this far, as always, if you have any thoughts and opinions on what I've spoken about here, or on the books or whatever, please do tell me down in the comments below. And also, of course, go over to the community tab to vote on the next book that we will read in this series. As always, I will give you 4 choices of books from different genres, and whichever book gets the most votes, I will read it next. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done it already. If you're curious as to know what I'm currently reading, or if you want to see more book reviews from me, go check out my Goodreads and or my Storygraph. Links for those profiles are down in the description below. You can follow me there if you're curious as to hear my opinions on other books. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see all of you very soon. Goodbye.